They tried to blow him up. He ate the explosion and grinned. He incinerated their tailed beasts and left a goddess in fucking ashes. This is the story of the loudest, hungriest, most unkillable fire dragon bastard Konoha ever produced, Naruto Uzumaki, the dragon slayer who made the ninja world kneel or burn.
The explosion tore the top off 3 trees, flattened a patch of forest the size of a house, and sent a mushroom of black smoke rolling up over Konoha's northern wall. And the 4 academy students who set it off were still laughing when they heard the slurping. Not screaming, not crying, slurping, long, loud, satisfied, like a kid working the bottom of a ramen bowl. The oldest boy stopped laughing first. What is that? The smoke pulled inward. That's the part nobody who saw it ever managed to explain properly. Fire is supposed to spread. This fire went the other way. It bent, curled, and streamed toward a single point inside the cloud like water down a drain. And the point was a 7-year-old's open mouth. Naruto Uzumaki walked out of the crater, sucking the last trailing ribbon of flame off his own fingers. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His jacket was shredded at both sleeves. His hair was smoking. And the white scarf around his neck, the one made of something that looked like woven scales, the one he'd worn every single day since anyone could remember, did not have a single mark on it. He burped. A little curl of fire came out. "Huh," he said. "Explosive tags taste like burnt pennies." The 4 bullies stood frozen in a triangle around him, 3 of them still holding kunai with the wire wrapped around the handles, because that had been the plan. Lure the weird orphan kid out past the training grounds with a story about a shortcut. Ring him with tags, blow him up a little, teach him about respect. Naruto rolled his shoulder until it popped. His grin came in slow and wide and showed teeth that were a bit too pointed for a human mouth. "Man," he said, "I'm fired up now." He didn't plan it. He didn't know how. His right fist just caught fire, a roaring, spinning wheel of flame the size of a cartwheel, and he punched the ground. The dirt turned to glass in a 10-meter circle. The heat wave picked all 4 boys off their feet and threw them backward into the tree line like laundry. Their kunai came down 20 seconds later, softened at the tips. Nobody died. Nobody even broke a bone. Every single one of them ran anyway, and none of them ever spoke to Naruto Uzumaki again as long as they lived. Naruto stood alone in the middle of a glass crater in a burning forest, 7 years old, and looked at his own hand with a kind of wonder. "Okay," he said, "that's new. The Anbu got there in 4 minutes. 2 squads. They came expecting an enemy infiltrator, maybe a rogue fire user, maybe worse. What they found was a small boy sitting on a scorched rock, poking a smoking branch with his foot, waiting. He looked up at the masked figures dropping out of the canopy and waved. "Are you guys in trouble too?" They took him to the Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi had ruled a hidden village through 2 wars, and he had learned to keep his face still through almost anything. He nearly lost it that afternoon, sitting across his desk from a child with singed eyebrows and fire still flickering at the corners of his grin like a candle that hadn't decided to go out. "They blew you up," Hiruzen said. "Yep. And you ate it. It was there." Naruto shrugged. "It smelled good." Hiruzen set down his pipe. Out in the hall, 2 Anbu were arguing in whispers about containment protocols and whether the ceiling core needed to be woken up. He could hear them. So apparently could Naruto, whose ear had turned toward the door with the ease of an animal. "They think I'm a monster," Naruto said. He didn't sound hurt. That was the part that would keep the old man up that night. "They always think that. It's kind of funny." "Funny? They run." Naruto grinned. "Grown-ups run from me. Me! I'm this big." He held a hand at chest height. "That's hilarious." Hiruzen looked at the boy for a long moment. Then he did something he had promised himself he'd do when Naruto was older, and did it early because the fire had already made the choice for him. "That scarf," he said. "May I see it?" Naruto's hand went up and closed around the white fabric so fast it looked like a reflex. "No, I don't intend to take it. Nobody takes it." Naruto's eyes had changed a little. The pupils had gone narrow and long, like a lizard sunning itself on a rock, and there was heat coming off his shoulders in a shimmer that bent the light on the wall behind him. "Ever." "Good." Hiruzen smiled. Then hold on to it and listen. You were brought to this village very young, in the summer, on the 7th day of July. Someone left you at the gate. They left you nothing but that scarf. He leaned forward. It is a memento from someone who loved you. That is all I know for certain, and it is enough. Naruto's fingers moved over the woven scales, slow, one at a time, the way you'd count something precious. July 7th, he said. July 7th. I already knew it was important. The boy's voice went low and strange, older than it should have been. It smells like him. Hiruzen's pipe stopped halfway to his mouth. Like who? And Naruto Uzumaki, age 7, sat there with his brow scrunched up in total honest frustration and said the thing that would keep the third Hokage awake in his chair until dawn. I dunno. I forgot his face. But he was warm and he was really, really big. And his voice made the ground shake when he laughed. He looked up. And he left on July 7th, and he didn't say goodbye. And when I find him, I'm gonna punch him in the mouth, and then I'm gonna hug him. The village decided that same week what Naruto Uzumaki was, not a demon. There was no seal on him, no beast in him, nothing to whisper about behind hands. What they had was worse in a way, because it had no explanation at all. A boy who walked out of a bomb blast licking his fingers. A boy who left handprints burned into the wood of the academy desks when he got excited. A boy who set his ramen on fire because he liked it crispy and then ate the flames off the top. Fear does not need a story. It just needs something it can't name. So they crossed the street. They pulled their kids inside. They talked about him in shops with the door closed. And Naruto, who was too loud and too warm and too stubborn to be crushed, made a decision at 7 years old that shaped every single thing that came after. If they were going to run from him anyway, he'd get strong enough that running turned into respect. The academy was a disaster, and the academy was also the best thing that ever happened to him, in that order. Written tests, nightmare. Ask him to sit still for 40 minutes with a pencil, and he'd be chewing the eraser by minute 6, and drawing dragons on the margin by minute 10. Hand signs, worse. Standard jutsu wants you to thread chakra through your body like silk through a needle. Naruto's insides ran a furnace. Every time he tried to mold chakra for a clone jutsu, his own heat cooked the technique from the inside, and what popped out of the smoke was a sad, half-melted thing that immediately fell over. 3 failures, 3 years. His graduation record became a village joke, but put him in the yard. Uzumaki. Instructor Daikoku had a clipboard and a headache. Your stance is wrong. Your elbow should be tucked. Like this. Strike the post. Got it. Do not use. Naruto struck the post. The training post, solid oak, wrapped, 30 years old, survived 4 generations of genin. Exploded. Splinters went up like a firework. The stump left in the ground burned merrily for 2 minutes, while Daikoku stood there with his clipboard on fire. I didn't mean to, Naruto said, and he was telling the truth, which somehow made it worse. He broke 7 posts that year. He broke a sparring dummy so hard it launched through a window into the faculty room. He put a boy named Kiba Inuzuka into a hedge with an open palm that never even lit up. And Kiba got up laughing and demanded a rematch, which is how Naruto learned that some people liked him better after he hit them. And then there was Iruka Umino. Iruka was the one who noticed that Naruto stayed late. Not for punishment, on his own. Standing in the empty yard after dark, throwing punch after punch after punch into open air, sweat rolling off him in the cold, the white scarf tied off and hanging down his back so it wouldn't get in the way. You know, Iruka said from the doorway, you failed the clone test again today. Yeah, you're going to fail it next year too. Probably. Naruto threw another punch. Steam came off his knuckles in the night air. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be Hokage. Iruka blinked. You're going to be Hokage. Somebody's got to look after everybody. He said it like a weather report. Might as well be the strongest guy in the village. And you think that's you. Naruto turned around, and his eyes had that lizard shine in the dark. And he grinned. Not yet. Give me a minute. Iruka went home that night and sat at his kitchen table for an hour without turning the light on. He'd spent years watching kids say they wanted to be great. Naruto Uzumaki said it like a promise he'd already made to somebody else. The night Naruto learned what he actually was, he was trying to make eggs. Age 9. His apartment. a gas ring with a bad valve, a pan with too much oil, and a boy who thought the way to cook faster was to turn everything to maximum. The flare-up went up the wall and swallowed his whole forearm. He panicked for exactly half a second, and then his body did something his brain had nothing to do with. He inhaled. The fire came off his arm in a rushing spiral and went down his throat, and it tasted. This is the part he could never explain to anybody without sounding insane. It tasted like the smell of the scarf, like a warm chest to fall asleep against, like a huge voice rumbling in the dark, saying, "Eat, you're small, you need to grow." Naruto sat down on his kitchen floor with the pan still smoking and his eyes stinging and no idea why. "Oh," he said. He drank the stove for 20 minutes. He set fire to his own bedsheet and ate that too. He ran outside at midnight, lit a barrel behind the noodle stand, and inhaled the whole thing in one pull. And when he came up, his arms were shaking, and his chest felt like a forge, and he could feel every single bone in his hands wanting to hit something. He punched a stone wall. The wall lost. Naruto Uzumaki stood in an alley at midnight, at 9 years old, staring at the crater he'd left in someone's property line, and started laughing so hard he had to sit down. His body made sense. For the first time in his whole life, his body made sense. Graduation, fourth attempt, went about the way you'd expect. He failed the written portion. He failed the clone jutsu. He was sitting outside on the swing at sunset, scarf pulled up over his mouth, when a chunin named Mizuki came and crouched next to him with a friendly face and a story about a secret second test and a scroll in the Hokage's tower. Naruto sniffed once. That was all it took. "You smell like a liar," he said. Mizuki's smile held. "Excuse me? You're sweating and your heart's going nuts, and you smell like you already made up your mind about something." Naruto stood up off the swing. His shoulders were steaming. "Iruka-sensei smells like chalk and ramen broth. Old man Hokage smells like tobacco and paper. You smell like a guy about to try something." The friendly face came off like a mask being dropped in the mud, and Mizuki went for the giant shuriken on his back. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist! Mizuki traveled 40 meters without touching the ground and hit the academy wall hard enough to leave the shape of a person in the plaster. His shuriken landed in a tree with the edge glowing dull orange. Iruka got there 90 seconds later, kunai out, ready to fight for a student's life, and found that student sitting on the unconscious traitor's back, eating a rice ball. "He was gonna steal something," Naruto said with his mouth full. "Also, he was gonna kill me, I think." He wasn't clear. Iruka stared. Then he did the only thing left to do. He untied his own headband and held it out. "You can't do a clone jutsu," he said. "Nope. You can't do a transformation. Not even a little. You just took down a chunin with one punch and smelled alive from 3 meters away." Iruka's throat worked. "Congratulations, Naruto. You're a shinobi." Naruto took the headband. He didn't put it on his forehead. The scarf lived there. The scarf came first. The scarf always came first. So he tied it around his left bicep and pulled the knot with his teeth. "Iruka-sensei." He looked up. "You're the first grown-up who never ran. Kid? So you're in my guild now." Iruka opened his mouth to ask what a guild was. He didn't get the chance because Naruto was already sprinting down the road yelling that he wanted ramen and that he'd pay next time, which was a lie so old it had a beard, team assignments turned Konoha's Jonin Lounge into a war zone. "Absolutely not," said one. "That boy melted a training post through the ground." "He set a river on fire," said another. "I want to be clear. Water. He set water on fire." Kakashi Hatake stood at the back with his book and one visible eye and said nothing at all until Hiruzen looked directly at him. "You've read the file," the Hokage said. "I've read the file." Kakashi turned a page. "Then I read it again because the first time I assumed there were typos. And I'd like him." Kakashi shut the book. "Also Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno because Sasuke needs someone he can't look down on and Sakura needs to see what commitment actually looks like before she decides she doesn't have any." Hiruzen exhaled smoke. "Team 7 then. Team 7. Kakashi's eye curved. "I'll bring a fire extinguisher." He was going to need a bigger one. Naruto met his team in classroom 301 by kicking the door open, which was locked. "Which one of you is the genius?" he announced. Sasuke Uchiha did not look up from the window. "Go away." "Cool, you are." Naruto dropped into the seat in front of him, spun around backward, and put his chin on his fists. Sakura, right? Pink hair. You threw a kunai at Kiba's dog once. That was awesome. I did not. Sakura went red. That was an accident. Best stuff usually is. Naruto turned back to Sasuke. Hey, you do fire, right? Uchiha do fire. I heard you do fire. Sasuke's eyes slid over, flat and cold. Why? Because I want to taste it. Sakura made a sound. Sasuke's expression did something complicated. You want to taste my jutsu? Yeah. You're broken. Probably. Naruto beamed. Their teacher arrived 40 minutes late, which Naruto had spent doing push-ups on the desk, and he came through the door with one hand up and an orange book in the other. Sorry. Black cat, long road, terrible luck. Kakashi's eye curved. Roof. Now. Naruto's nose went up. Then he was gone from the desk and hanging off Kakashi's arm trying to get the book, because that book had been read 1,000 times, and things that get read 1,000 times smell like a person's whole life, and Naruto refused on principle to lose the attention contest to a paperback. What's in it? Is it good? Why do you love it more than us? Get off my arm. Make me. Kakashi looked over at Sakura and Sasuke with an expression that would define the next several months of his life. Two of you, he said, are going to have to help me carry him. The bell test started at dawn in Training Ground 7, which by lunchtime would no longer exist in any recognizable form. 2 bells. Kakashi held them up. They jingled. 3 of you. Whoever fails to get one goes back to the academy. Come at me with everything, including the intent to kill, or you'll never touch these. Sasuke went first, and Sasuke was good, genuinely good. Fast off the mark, tight rotation on his shuriken, taijutsu that came with a family's worth of drilling behind it. He got close enough that Kakashi actually had to move a foot, and when Kakashi murmured, "Not bad," under his breath, Sasuke's whole body registered it like a coin dropped into a jar. He noticed. He kept it. Sakura tried to be smart about it, worked a substitution into a trap line, and was standing in a genjutsu illusion of a mangled Sasuke 90 seconds later. She woke up in the grass with her ears ringing. Then Naruto walked out of the tree line, and he didn't sneak. Hey! Mask guy! Kakashi lowered his book 2 inches. That's not how ambushes work. I'm not ambushing you, I'm gonna beat you up. Naruto rolled his neck till it cracked. Want to get started or you gonna read? Up in the trees, Sasuke made a decision that he would examine from every angle for years afterward. Not to help. To prove something. To show the Jonin who mattered on this team and who was a liability, and to make sure it happened while Kakashi was watching, he ran through the signs. Tiger. Fire style. Grand fireball jutsu. The fireball came out the size of a wagon, and it came at Naruto's back at full speed, roaring, kicking up dust in a cone behind it. Sakura screamed his name. Naruto turned around and opened his mouth. The fireball hit and did not explode. It funneled. It compressed. It went down into him in a single tightening spiral like a rope being pulled through a hole, the light of it flickering in his throat, the roar of it dropping in pitch until there was nothing left in the clearing but a boy standing in scorched grass with his cheeks full. He swallowed. He patted his stomach. Twice. Sasuke Uchiha's brain shut off for 3 full seconds. He would remember those 3 seconds when he was old. You call that fire? Naruto wiped his mouth with the back of his wrist. His pupils narrowed to slits. Tasted like cheap charcoal. What are you even feeding that thing? Sakura, flat on her back in the grass. He ate it. Sasuke, he ate it. I know what he did. Kakashi closed his book, both eyes open. And the headband came up off the Sharingan before Naruto had taken a single step, because the copy nin had spent a lifetime learning to recognize the exact moment a situation stopped being training. All right, Kakashi said. Come here, Naruto. Naruto's fists caught fire and he came. Here is the thing everybody who watched that fight got wrong at first. They thought Kakashi was going easy. Kakashi wasn't going easy. Kakashi went into the ground, into the trees, into every trick in a Jonin's bag, and none of it worked because you cannot hide from a nose. Earth style, inner decapitation. You're under my left foot, Naruto said, and stomped. The earth blew open, and Kakashi came out of it sideways at speed, sliding 12 meters in the dirt with his sleeves smoking. He came up already forming signs because he just felt the temperature of the ground under his own jutsu. Fire user. Fire eater. So water. Water style. Water bullet. The blast caught Naruto's center mass and drove him back through 2 saplings. Steam hissed off his chest. He stood in the shallow crater with water sheeting off his shoulders, and he laughed. Yeah, okay, that one stings a little. Naruto's chest started to expand. It kept expanding. It expanded past anything a ribcage should permit, the air around him bending inward in visible ribbons, sucking leaves off the ground toward his mouth. Kakashi's Sharingan went wide. That's not chakra! That is not chakra! Fire Dragon's roar! The column of flame that came out of Naruto's mouth was 11 meters across at the base, and it did not stop for anything. The kunai Kakashi had thrown melted in the air and fell as droplets. The remaining water flashed to vapor. 2 trees didn't burn. They were simply gone, base to crown, and the third one fell over out of what seemed like respect. Kakashi built a wall of earth and water at the last possible instant, and the wall lasted about a second and a half before turning into a screaming cloud of steam that rolled across the whole training ground. Sakura and Sasuke hit the dirt as the heat wave went over them. The grass on the far bank of the river caught. Somewhere in the village, 3 streets away, a woman took her laundry in because it had suddenly gotten hot. Kakashi Hatake, elite jonin, Anbu veteran, the man who copied 1,000 techniques, was on one knee behind a broken wall of mud with his hair pushed back by the wind of it, thinking a very simple thought. If that had connected, I would be dead. The steam was the mistake. Kakashi knew it a half second late. Steam blinds a Sharingan. Steam means nothing to a nose. Fire Dragon's claw. The kick came out of the white at knee height, flame trailing off the heel in a crescent, and Kakashi got his forearms up in time to save his ribs, and not in time to save his footing. He went up. Naruto went with him, and in the air, at close range, with a Jonin's guard split for one instant, a 9-year-old and spirit brawler with a white scarf snapping behind him grabbed the front of Kakashi's vest and drove a burning fist into it. They hit the ground together. When the dust dropped, Naruto was sitting on Kakashi's chest, holding both bells up over his head like he'd caught a fish. Ha! Kakashi lay in the crater, looked up at the sky, and thought about the fact that the edges of his book, currently in his back pocket, were now singed. Naruto, yeah? There are 2 bells. Yeah! There are 3 of you. Naruto looked at the bells. Then he stood up, walked over to Sakura, and dropped one in her hands. He walked to Sasuke and held out the second one. Sasuke stared at it like it was a snake. I don't want your charity. It's not charity. I just don't need 2. Naruto shrugged. Take it or I'm tying it to your hair. Why? And Naruto Uzumaki looked at the boy who had fired a jutsu at his back 20 minutes earlier and said it without 1 ounce of heat in his voice. Because you're my guild now. You don't leave your guild behind, even the mean ones. Sasuke's fingers closed around the bell. Kakashi, still flat on his back in a crater in the ruins of a training field that would need to be rebuilt from the topsoil up, started laughing into the ash. Team 7 passes, he said. All 3. Congratulations, I need a week off. They did D ranks for 2 months. Weeds, cats, fences, more cats. Naruto burned a hole through a client's shed roof, trying to get a cat down, and paid for it by working at the noodle stand for 9 days, during which he ate more than he earned, and Tochi lost money on the arrangement out of pure affection. Then came Tazuna, and the land of waves, and the boat. Oh, the boat. All right, Kakashi said, we're crossing by water, keep it down. The mist should hide. Naruto Uzumaki, destroyer of training grounds, eater of fireballs, took 4 steps onto the deck of the rowboat and stopped being a person. His face went white, then green. His whole body sagged forward over the railing like a coat falling off a hook. Oh, no. Sakura leaned over him. Naruto? Make it stop. Make what stop? The moving. His voice was a wet whisper of pure hatred. It's going up and down. Why is it doing both? Kakashi crouched next to his student, deadly serious. You beat me unconscious in a field 2 months ago. Different. Naruto's fingers dug into the wood hard enough to leave scorch marks. That was a fight. This is a boat. His head came up an inch, eyes glassy, and he glared out at the water with total, honest, murderous intent. I swear on my scarf, if I gotta ride this thing again, I'll burn the ocean. You can't burn the ocean. I'll try. Sasuke Uchiha turned his face away and put a hand over his mouth, and if you'd asked him under oath, he would have said he was checking the mist. Tazuna, the bridge builder, drunk and doomed and 100% certain his money had bought him children, watched the orange one dry heave over the side for 20 solid minutes. "That's my bodyguard," he said. "That's your bodyguard," Kakashi agreed. Solid ground fixed everything. Naruto stepped off the boat, took 2 breaths, and was fully restored, bouncing, loud, punching his own palm, asking which direction the bad guys were. They found out 10 minutes up the road when a puddle on a dry path turned into 2 men with a bladed chain. The chain went around Naruto in a blur, wrapped him from shoulder to hip, and the demon brothers yanked it tight with enough force to cut a man in half. Naruto looked down at himself with the expression of someone who just found a receipt in his pocket. "Huh," he flexed. The chain in front of his chest went orange. Then white. Then it came apart in 11 places at once, links dropping into the dirt as glowing beads that hissed in the wet grass, and the 2 men holding the ends were hauled off their feet by the recoil. Naruto grinned and his teeth caught the light. "My turn! Fire Dragon's wing attack!" Both arms swept out, and 2 great streams of fire went with them, curving through the trees on either side of the road in a pair of wings 40 meters wide. The demon brothers were picked up, spun, and deposited unconscious in a ditch with their armor smoking and their eyebrows entirely gone. Sakura sat down in the road. "That was 2 Chunin," she said. "That was 2 Chunin missing nin, and you did it in 6 seconds. And you're smiling." "I always smile." Naruto pulled his scarf back up. "It's the best part of the job." Kakashi tied the brothers to a tree and looked at Tazuna over the top of them, and his one eye was much less friendly than it had been on the boat. "So," he said, "about who's actually paying to have you killed?" The mist came in 3 days later on the bridge road, and it came in thick as wool. Visibility, 0. Kakashi's hand went up. "Everyone in formation, he's here. This is a Jonin-level presence. Zabuza Momochi, hidden mist, the demon. Silent killing. Don't trust your ears." Naruto's head tipped back and his nostrils flared once. "Cold steel," he said. "Old blood. Salt." Kakashi's eyes snapped over. "What?" "That's what he smells like." Naruto pointed straight up and to the left without hesitation. "He's 12 meters that way, and he's holding his breath, and he's got something huge on his back." The mist went utterly still. Then a voice came out of it, and it was amused in the way of a man who has enjoyed his work for a long time. "Well, that's new." The executioner's blade came down out of the white in a diagonal cut aimed at Tazuna's neck, so fast that Sakura hadn't even finished raising her kunai. Naruto caught it, both palms, flat against the flat of the blade. And the instant his skin touched steel, his hands burst into fire, and the sword began to shriek. A high, thin, dreadful noise. The sound of quenched metal being asked to do something it hadn't agreed to. Zabuza Momochi looked over the top of his own weapon at a 12-year-old holding it still. "Hi," said the 12-year-old. "Fire Dragon's Iron Fist." The punch caught Zabuza under the ribs and folded him around it, and then he was gone. 60 meters through the mist like a cannonball, out over the water, skipping twice off the surface before he hit the far bank and went through a tree. The mist itself flinched. 20 meters of it burned off in a bubble around Naruto and just stayed clear, because it couldn't hold together in the heat coming off his shoulders. Kakashi, headband already up, Sharingan already spinning, said something extremely unprofessional under his breath. "Sensei?" Sakura squeaked. "I'm fine, I'm reassessing." He tightened his gloves. "Every day with this one. Sakura, guard Tazuna. Sasuke, watch the water. Naruto." "Already going." They fought Zabuza on the water, and Zabuza was magnificent. He was a monster of the old school. A man who had graduated by killing 100 classmates, and he fought like a shark in a bathtub. He put Kakashi in a water prison. He dropped water dragons the size of houses. He clipped Naruto's shoulder to the bone with a blade edge and laughed while doing it. Then Naruto ate the water dragon jutsu. Not the water. He couldn't eat water. What he ate was the heat he made himself. He punched the dragon head on, made steam, and inhaled his own steam to keep the burn going. And if that sounds insane, Zabuza thought so too, right up until the boy came out of the cloud with fire crawling down both arms in spirals. Fire Dragon's crushing fang. The strike came down through the water prison, and the prison came apart into vapor with Kakashi still inside it. The copy nin hit the water on his feet, soaked, coughing free, And the look he gave his student was not a teacher's look. It was the look one professional gives another. "On your left," Kakashi said. "Got it!" And then Haku arrived, and the temperature dropped 40 degrees. The demonic ice mirrors went up around Naruto in a dome, 21 of them, floating, each one holding a reflection of a masked boy with sad eyes. The needles came from every angle at once, and there was nowhere to move and no way to see the source. Sakura screamed from the bridge. Inside the mirrors, Naruto took 11 senbon in the arms and back, went to one knee, and started laughing again. "Ice," he said. "You built a room out of ice, around me." Haku's voice came from all 21 mirrors. "You cannot break them. My speed is beyond your eyes. I'm not gonna break them." Naruto stood up. His whole body began to glow from the inside, a dull red at the chest that spread up his throat and out along his shoulders, and the air in the dome bent and warped and began to howl. "I'm gonna cook them." He didn't punch. He didn't roar. He just burned, all of him, everywhere, all at once. A standing furnace in a sealed room, the mirrors started sweating. Water ran down the inside of every single one, and the reflections warped, and Haku's speed stopped mattering, because there was nowhere in the dome that wasn't 300 degrees. The masked boy staggered out of the melt with frost boiling off his robe. "Fire Dragon's Talon!" The kick took Haku's mask off in one piece. It hit the bridge and slid to a stop at Sasuke's feet, cracked down the middle, and behind it was a face younger than any of them expected. Naruto stood over him with his fist raised and did not throw the punch. "You're a kid," he said. "I am a tool." Haku's eyes were wet. "Zabuza-san has no use for a broken tool. Kill me." "That's the dumbest thing I ever heard." Naruto lowered his hand. "Nobody's a tool. You want something to do? Do something for yourself for once." Haku stared up at him. The bridge behind them was still steaming, and that's when Gato showed up with an army. 200 mercenaries came off the boats and up onto the unfinished bridge, and every one of them was armed, and they were laughing. Change of plan. Gato tapped his cane on the wood. He was a small man with tiny eyes behind tinted glasses, and he had the smile of somebody who had never once been hit. "The demons damaged goods. I'll take the girl for the men, kill the old drunk, and dump the brats in the bay. Nothing personal. It's business." At the end of the bridge, half hidden in the mist, the villagers of Wave were arriving with hoes and pans and one crossbow, because a boy named Inari had gone door to door screaming until they came. Naruto turned around. Nobody on that bridge heard him move. What they felt was the heat. The wood of the bridge began to steam under his sandals. The mist didn't roll back. It evaporated in a widening ring from the outside in. Nails in the planking around him went from gray to dull orange. Sakura grabbed Tazuna's arm and pulled him back 4 steps without knowing she'd done it. Naruto's pupils narrowed into thin vertical lines. His scarf lifted off his shoulders in the updraft of his own body. "You," he said, "hurt my friends." Gato took a step back. "Boy, do you know who I? Tazuna's my friend. Inari's my friend. This bridge is theirs and you were gonna take it." The shimmer above Naruto's head bent the whole world behind him. His voice came out low and it came out huge. "I'll never forgive anyone who hurts my friends." 200 men all at once understood that they had made a mistake. "Fire Dragon's Wing attack!" His arms swept apart and the fire came off them in 2 rivers, each one 20 meters wide, and it went down the length of the bridge like the tide coming in sideways. Steel melted. Not glowed. Melted. 200 swords went soft and dropped out of hands as bright dripping ribbons. Armor fused. Men threw themselves off the bridge into the freezing water because the water was mercy. The mist over the entire channel vanished in one heartbeat, and for the first time in years, the people of Wave saw their harbor in full sunlight. Because a 12-year-old had burned the fog off the sea, Gato ran. The richest man in 3 countries dropped his cane and ran on his little legs, screaming one word over and over, "Demon, demon, demon!" And Naruto walked after him at a stroll, hands in his pockets, and stopped him with one foot on the back of his coat. "Say it again," Naruto said. Gato said nothing. Gato had wet himself. "Yeah," Naruto said. "I thought so." On the far end of the bridge, Inari stood in front of 40 grown adults with a crossbow he couldn't lift properly and tears running down his face, and what he was feeling had no name yet at 8 years old. It felt like a wave cresting inside his chest. It felt like the moment when you find out that the thing you were told to accept was never true. Naruto looked back at him through the smoke and lifted a hand. "Hey, Inari." "Yeah? You cried yesterday. You said there's no such thing as heroes, and everybody who tries just dies." Naruto jerked a thumb at the 200 disarmed men floundering in the harbor. "Look at that and tell me again." Inari's mouth worked. "If you don't have the courage to change things," Naruto said, "then you might as well die. So get the courage. Your dad had it. Get yours." Inari dropped the crossbow and ran the whole length of the bridge and hit him in the stomach at full speed. And Naruto, who had eaten a grand fireball and a water dragon and shrugged off both, went oof and nearly fell over. Zabuza Momochi died on that bridge, on his own terms, with Gado's blood on his teeth and Haku's hand in his, and he was smiling when he went. Naruto stood in the falling snow with his scarf whipping in the wind and watched 2 graves get dug. "He was a bad guy," Naruto said. "He was," said Kakashi. "He loved that kid though. He did." Naruto rubbed his thumb over the woven scales at his throat. "Then he wasn't all bad." He turned away. "Somebody loved me too once. I don't remember his face. I know he was warm." Kakashi looked at the back of that white scarf for a long, long moment. "Naruto, where did you learn to fight like that?" "Somebody taught me." He kept walking. "I'll remember him someday. And when I do, I'm gonna find him and punch him." The bridge was finished in 11 days. They named it the Great Naruto Bridge because Tazuna insisted and because the villagers had voted before he even proposed it. And then Team 7 got on a boat to go home, and for 4 hours the Great Naruto Bridge's namesake hung over the rail, making a noise like a dying goat, while a 13-year-old Uchiha stared at the horizon and shook. "Sasuke," Sakura whispered, "are you laughing?" "No, you're laughing. I'm not laughing." "Kill me," said the pride of Wave Country. Konoha threw the Chunin exams that summer and the whole world came. Naruto liked the exam hall on site because it smelled like 100 people who all wanted to hit each other. He didn't like the paperwork. He didn't like the guy from Sound who shoved him in the corridor, which is why that guy left the corridor through a window. He liked Gaara of the Sand least of all, and he couldn't explain why. They passed in the street. That was it. A boy his own age with red hair and no eyebrows and a gourd on his back, and Naruto's whole body locked up mid-stride and the hair on his arms stood up. "Whoa," Sakura followed his eyes. What? What is it?" "That guy." Naruto's nose wrinkled. "He smells like 2 things at once." "2. Him and something else living in him that's real old and real angry." Naruto's grin came up crooked. "That's gross. I kinda wanna fight it." Gaara's head turned. Across a crowded street, sand hissed in his gourd, and pale green eyes found Naruto's and held them. Neither of them said a word. Both of them made a promise. The written exam nearly killed him. Abiki Morino's rules were built to make children cheat under pressure, and Naruto sat in the 3rd row with a pencil in his fist like a knife, sweating, 1 hour into the worst experience of his young life. He couldn't read half the questions. He definitely couldn't answer them. The kid next to him was flicking a mirror at the ceiling, and the girl behind him had a bug on her paper doing something clever. And Naruto Uzumaki, who could track a man's heartbeat by scent through fog, sat there and slowly filled the entire answer sheet with a very detailed drawing of a dragon. Then the 10th question came, and Abiki laid out the trap: take it and fail forever, or quit now and stay a genin. Half the room raised their hands to leave. Naruto put his hand up. Sakura's heart stopped. And then he slammed it down on the desk so hard the desk cracked in half. "I'll take it!" His grin split his face. "I don't run. I'm gonna be Hokage. And if I gotta be a genin forever, then I'll be the strongest genin who ever lived, and you'll all have to call me sir anyway." The remaining candidates, who had been terrified for 55 straight minutes, felt their spines come back. Nobody else quit. Ibiki looked at the boy who'd drawn a dragon on his exam paper. "You all pass," he said. Naruto blinked. "Wait, what about the questions?" "You passed." "I didn't answer any of—" "Naruto," Sakura hissed. "Shut up." The Forest of Death took 8 teams off the board in the first 4 hours. Team 7 made it 11 hours before the trees went silent, all of them at once. Every bird, every insect, every leaf. Naruto stopped walking. "Something big just walked in," he said. The wind came first, a gale out of nowhere that flattened brush and tore Sakura off her feet. And when it dropped, the pressure that came behind it wasn't wind at all. It was killing intent, and it poured over Team 7 like poured lead. Sasuke Uchiha, prodigy of a slaughtered clan, dropped to his knees and vomited. Every instinct in him was howling about predators and open mouths and being small. Sakura couldn't make her hands unclench from the tree root she'd grabbed. She was seeing her own death on loop, over and over, in 100 versions. Naruto walked forward and stood in front of both of them. Kukuku. The voice came from everywhere. A figure stepped out of the trunk of a tree like it was a curtain. Pale skin, long black hair, a grass headband, and a smile with far too much tongue in it. Well, the Uchiha, and 2 others. The killing intent doubled. It hit Naruto square and rolled off him, not blocked, burned. The pressure hit the heat coming off Naruto's body and came apart the way morning fog comes apart in direct sun, and the visible edge of it curled up and away over his shoulders in wisps. Orochimaru's smile paused. Naruto reached up, took hold of the white scarf, and pressed it flat to his chest for 1 second, the way you touch a photograph before a fight. Then he dropped both arms into a brawler stance, weight forward, chin down. "You're creepy," Naruto said. "I'm gonna turn you into ash." "Naruto, don't." Sasuke's voice broke on it. "You can't fight that. That's not a genin. That's... Yeah, I know." Naruto's pupils stretched into slits. "That's why I'm excited." Orochimaru's hands came together and he slammed a palm into a branch. Summoning jutsu. The snake was the size of a warehouse. It came down through the canopy with its jaw already open, taking 3 trees with it on the way, and the whole forest floor jumped when it landed. Sakura screamed. Sasuke grabbed her collar and hauled her backward. Naruto jumped straight up into its mouth. "Fire Dragon Sword Horn!" Every inch of him ignited, head to heels, a human shape wrapped in a roaring cone of fire, and he went in headfirst at full speed like a drill launched from a cannon. There was one horrible second where the snake's throat bulged with light, and then a burning line traced itself down the length of the serpent from the inside, 40 meters of it, in a straight run. Naruto came out the tail end in a spray of ash. The snake fell apart in 2 pieces behind him, and both pieces were on fire. Orochimaru's tongue stopped moving. That, he said, was a summon of the Ryuchi cave. It was slow. Kukuku. The smile came back thinner. "Then let me try something I made myself. Forbidden style, corrosive serpent flame." The fire that came out of Orochimaru's mouth was wrong. Purple-black at the core, venom-heavy, designed to eat a body from the inside out. A technique he'd built over 9 years for the sole purpose of killing men who thought fire couldn't hurt them. It hit Naruto full in the face. Sakura's hands went over her mouth. Naruto stood in the middle of it and inhaled. The corrosive flame bent, funneled, and went down his throat in a spiral, and his cheeks bulged and he made a face. "Ugh!" He swallowed, coughed once. A curl of purple smoke came out his nose. "Tastes weird, kinda like medicine. You got a problem in your mouth, dude." The venom broke apart in his stomach with a faint hiss, and that was all it did. Orochimaru of the Sannin, who had killed hundreds, who had walked out of the Anbu's best trap laughing, who had never once in 30 years felt the floor move under his understanding of the world, took 1 step back. "What?" he said, and there was nothing funny in it now. "Are you?" Naruto's fist caught fire, and the light of it lit the whole clearing gold. "I'm a dragon slayer." He crossed the distance in a single step. Not a blur, a step, one, and the ground where he'd been standing burst upward from the shove. "Fire Dragon's Iron Fist!" The uppercut caught Orochimaru under the jaw. The sound it made was heard by 3 separate exam teams a kilometer away, and every one of them later described it as a tree falling on a bell. The Sannin's feet left the branch. He went up through the canopy, through it, snapping limbs the whole way, and kept going, a shrinking dot against the gray sky trailing smoke off his chin. He came down 400 meters away in the river, and he did not get up in his own face. The body he'd been wearing was ruined, jaw broken, skin sloughing, and the thing inside it was already crawling out through the mouth of it, already deciding that whatever the Uchiha was worth, this was the wrong week. Because the snake part of him, the old, deep reptile part that had lived in his spine since he'd first taken the serpent contract, had recognized something in that clearing. It hadn't recognized a boy. It had recognized a predator, and it had recognized itself as prey. And Orochimaru had spent his whole life making sure he never felt that again. He fled. He left the scroll, the exam, and the curse mark he'd meant to give Sasuke Uchiha in the dirt behind him. Back in the clearing, Naruto shook his hand out and pouted. "Ah, come on! He ran!" He turned around. "Sasuke, did you see? He ran. He was supposed to be strong. Everybody's always." Sasuke was on his knees in the leaves, staring at him. Sakura was standing very still with tears running down her cheeks and her whole body shaking. "Guys, you punched a Sannin," Sasuke said. His voice sounded like it belonged to somebody else. "You ate his jutsu and you punched him out of the forest." "Yeah? He was going to kill us." "Yeah, that's why I hit him." Naruto scratched his head. "Are you crying, Sakura? Is he crying?" "Shut up," said Sasuke. "Shut up." And he laughed once, a terrible cracked sound, and put his forehead in his hands. He had spent 7 years measuring himself against a mountain in the distance. He had just watched somebody else run past him toward it barefoot. Naruto crouched down in front of him and held out the scroll they needed. "Hey, Sasuke." "What?" "You froze." "I know. So did she. So does everybody, the first time somebody that big looks at him." Naruto's grin came back easy. "Next time, stand behind me. I'll get you strong enough that you don't gotta." Sasuke Uchiha took the scroll, and something in him twisted so hard it left a mark because two feelings had arrived at once and they hated each other. Gratitude, and a shame so hot he could taste it. That knot would take them all the way to a waterfall. The preliminary rounds ran in an arena under the tower, and they were fast. Naruto drew Kiba Inuzuka, which Kiba was thrilled about, for approximately 9 seconds. "Naruto, sorry man, but I've been training. Akamaru and me are going to the finals." Kiba tossed the pill to his dog, and Akamaru went red, and the two of them went up the wall and into the spin. Fang over fang! 2 drilling tornadoes came down at Naruto from crossing angles, howling, tearing the arena floor into gravel. Naruto reached up and caught Kiba by the back of the collar, mid-spin. One hand. The rotation stopped like it had hit a wall, and Akamaru sailed past and hit a barrier and slid down it in a heap, dizzy but fine. Kiba dangled from Naruto's fist with his legs swinging. "Your nose is good," Naruto said, holding him out at arm's length, examining him like produce. "Hey, but mine's better." He let go. Kiba hit the floor. Hayate raised a hand. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." Up in the gallery, Shikamaru Naru pushed off the rail with the face of a man revising a great many plans. "Well," he said, "that's terrifying." He held back, Kakashi murmured beside him. "That was holding back?" "He didn't set anything on fire." Kakashi turned a page. "For Naruto, that's diplomacy." Sasuke won his match with a broken field taijutsu display that impressed everybody and satisfied him not at all. Sakura fought Ino to a standstill that cost her more courage than either of them knew. Shikamaru cheated brilliantly. Neji Hyuga took his cousin Hinata apart in 90 seconds and had to be physically pulled off her. And Naruto watched that one from the rail with both hands on the metal and his knuckles going white. The metal was glowing red where he gripped it when the medics carried Hinata out. "Hey!" Naruto said down into the arena. "Hyuga?" Neji looked up. "Pray you get me." The Byakugan flickered on, ran over Naruto once, and shut off with the closest thing to a smirk Neji ever allowed himself. "Your chakra network is a disgrace," Neji said. "Wild, unformed, leaking in 9 places. I would end you in 20 seconds. "Cool." Naruto's teeth showed. "Say that again in a month." The month of training between the prelims and the finals ran like this. Kakashi tried 3 separate times to teach Naruto chakra control. Day 1, tree climbing without hands. Naruto burned the tree down. Day 4, water walking. Naruto stood on the pond, boiled it, and then stood in a hole in the middle of a cloud of steam looking pleased with himself while 40 fish complained. Day 9, leaf balancing. Naruto held the leaf on his forehead for 11 seconds, got excited about how well it was going, and set his own hair on fire. Kakashi lay back on the grass on day 9 and stared at the sky. "All right," he said, "new plan. We stop pretending you're a ninja." Naruto sat up, hair still smoking. "Huh? You don't mold chakra. You have chakra, plenty of it, and it's monstrous. But it doesn't run in a network like mine. It burns like fuel in a furnace, and the furnace has a mind of its own." Kakashi sat up on his elbows. "So we forget the network. We train the fire." Yes! Finally! Not bigger, though. Ah, Naruto. Kakashi's eye was steady. You can already erase a training field. Anybody can throw a bomb. Do you know how many jonin die to their own big techniques because they can't put them exactly where they want them? He pointed at a leaf on a branch 40 meters away. Burn that leaf. Only that leaf. Naruto stared at it for a long time. Then he took a breath and let out a thread of flame the width of a chopstick, and it went 40 meters through the air and burned a hole in that leaf and nothing else, and he was so surprised he fell over. Ha! I did it! Sensei, did you see? I saw. Do it 1,000 more times. He did it 4,000 more times. And at night, he climbed to the top of the Hokage monument alone and sat on the third stone head with his scarf pulled up over his nose against the cold. Then he'd stand up, tip his head back, fill his chest, and aim at the moon. Fire dragons roar. The column went straight up out of the mountaintop into the black sky, 500 meters of it, and for the 8 or 9 seconds it lasted, the entire valley was lit up gold. The rooftops, the river, the tower, the forest, all of it, like somebody had opened a furnace door over the world. Half the village learned to sleep through it. The other half started coming out to watch. By the third week, there were people on their balconies at midnight with tea, waiting for it. Kids stayed up. An old woman who had crossed the street to avoid him for 11 years brought a folding chair. On the 4th week, Hiruzen Sarutobi stood on the tower roof with his pipe cold in his hand and watched a boy paint the sky and thought of what the Anbu report from 6 years ago had said. I forgot his face, but he was warm, and he was really, really big, and his voice made the ground shake when he laughed. Igneel, said the Hokage to nobody, and the wind took it. They matched him against Neji Hyuga in the finals, and the stadium sold out in a day. The Kazekage sat next to the Hokage. Nobles came from 4 countries. Rumors had gotten out of the Forest of Death, the corrosive flame Sannin story, mangled and improbable, and everyone had an opinion. Naruto came out onto the sand with his hands behind his head, headband on his arm, scarf around his throat, and grinned up at a crowd of 40,000 people. Neji came out with the walk of a man attending a formality. You should be aware, Neji said, that I have already seen how this ends. Yeah? You are a failure. That was decided before you were born by the same order that decided what I am. The Byakugan came on, veins standing out at his temple. You cannot form a single basic jutsu. Your chakra runs wild because your fate is to be wild and to lose. Fighting your fate only makes it hurt more. Naruto tilted his head. You always talk this much? Begin, said Hayate. Neji vanished. He was fast, faster than anything Naruto had seen from someone his own age, and he came inside Naruto's guard in the first second because Naruto led with a punch and Naruto's punch missed. You're in my range. Neji dropped low. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. 2 strikes, 4 strikes, 8, 16, 32, 64. Everyone landed. Fingertips like nails, driven into Tenketsu with total accuracy, shutting the chakra network down point by point in under 30 seconds. Naruto's arms dropped. His knees went. The heat coming off him guttered out like somebody had closed a damper, and the sand at his feet stopped smoking. He hit his hands and knees. Neji stepped back and exhaled through his nose. Up in the Hyuga box, Hiyashi's shoulders eased half a centimeter. In the stands, Ino grabbed Sakura's arm. Kakashi leaned forward with his book forgotten in his lap. Your chakra is sealed at every gate, Neji said. You will find you cannot even stand. Naruto's hands flattened in the sand. His head came up, and he laughed. It wasn't a brave laugh. It wasn't defiance. It was delight, honest and awful, the sound of somebody who had just gotten a present. You sealed my chakra, Naruto said, getting a foot under himself. That's actually really impressive. Nobody's ever done that before. Stay down. But hey, Naruto stood all the way up, and the grin split his face wide. You didn't seal my magic. Neji's Byakugan flared. And for the first time in his life, the all-seeing eye of the Hyuga clan showed him something that made no sense. Because Naruto's chakra network was still sealed, every gate shut, nothing moving through it at all, and something else in his body had begun to move instead. It came from the core of him. It came from somewhere that had no pathways and needed none. It rose up through muscle and bone like a tide of red light, and it did not ask the Tenketsu for permission. It went through them. forcing them open from the inside by sheer pressure, 64 gates blowing outward one after another like rivets popping off a boiler. The sand under Naruto's feet fused to glass. "That is impossible," Neji said. "Fire Dragon's iron fist." The stone floor of the arena cracked in a spiderweb 4 meters wide. Steam rolled off Naruto's shoulders. The front 2 rows of the stadium got up and moved back, and then the 3rd row moved, and then a whole section was standing. "We don't have to know what tomorrow holds." Naruto came at him, voice raw, fire climbing both arms. "That's why we can live for everything we're worth today. Your fate's a room you locked yourself in." The first punch caught Neji's crossed forearms and drove him 8 meters back through the dirt. The second one he slipped, and he came in under it with a palm to Naruto's chest that would have stopped a bull. And Naruto took it and kept walking. Neji's eyes went wide. "Fire Dragon's wing attack." Neji got airborne to save his legs, and the 2 streams of flame passed under him, scorching the arena wall, black in a long stripe, and he landed inside the guard and hammered 8 strikes into Naruto's ribs. They landed. They hurt. Naruto's mouth filled with blood, and he spat it into the sand and laughed with red teeth. "You hit hard for a guy who doesn't want to be here." "You will stop." Neji's voice cracked for the first time. "You will stop getting up." "Nope." Neji planted his feet, and both arms came up, and the chakra came out of every one of his pores at once. 8 trigrams. Rotation. The dome of spinning chakra went up around him. The absolute defense of the Hyuga main house, hath a technique that had turned aside water dragons and lightning and 100 years of enemies, a wall that had never once been broken. Naruto planted his back foot. Both hands came up over his head and clapped together, and the fire that gathered between them was so bright that people in the stands lifted their arms to shield their faces, and the temperature in the stadium bowl climbed 20 degrees in 3 seconds. Fire Dragon's brilliant flame. He brought it down 2-fisted into the top of the dome. The rotation held. For 1 second, it held, and the whole arena howled with the sound of 2 absolutes arguing, the chakra shell screaming, the flame pressing, the sand around the edge of the arena fusing into a glass ring, the banners on the upper deck catching fire and being beaten out by frantic officials. Then cracks appeared in the spinning wall, actual cracks in a technique made of pure chakra, opening like ice on a lake. The dome came apart outward. Neji Hyuga was launched off his feet, through the air, across the entire arena, and into the stadium wall, and he hit it hard enough to leave a shape and slid down it and stayed there with his eyes open and unfocused. Nobody in 40,000 seats made a sound. Naruto lowered his arms. His knuckles were burned. His shirt was gone from the ribs up. His scarf was untouched, still white, still perfect, snapping in the thermal draft. Hayate swallowed. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. And 40,000 people came off their feet at once, and the roar shook dust out of the rafters. In the Hyuga box, Hiyashi Hyuga stood alone with a hand pressed flat to the rail, seeing something that was going to keep him awake for a month. A boy from nowhere, with no clan and no bloodline, breaking the thing his family had spent 4 centuries calling destiny. In the competitor's box, Rock Lee had both fists in the air and tears streaming down his face, screaming about the flames of youth so loud that Tenten had to hold onto his belt. And in the Kage box, the 3rd Hokage leaned forward slowly with his fingers laced together. And there was something new in his eyes, and the man in the Kazakage's robes beside him noticed it. "Remarkable," said the false Kazakage. "You've raised quite a weapon, Lord Third." "I've raised quite a boy," said Hiruzen. "The difference will matter to you shortly." Naruto crossed the arena to where Neji had come to rest and crouched down. "Hey, leave. Your uncle's watching," Naruto said. "So's your whole clan, so I'm gonna say this out loud." He grabbed Neji's collar and pulled him up to sitting. "You lost because you decided you already knew how it ended. That's it. That's the only reason. You're the strongest guy in this whole tournament besides me, and you spent the whole fight fighting your dad's grave instead of me." Neji's hand shook where it lay on the sand. "He died for the main house," he said. "He was made to." Then he made a call. Naruto stood up. "Ask him, out loud, in front of everybody. If it's a cage, kick the door. That's what I do." He turned and walked away, and behind him Neji Hyuga began, for the first time in 9 years, to cry. And then the feathers started falling. Genjutsu rolled over the stadium and the crowd went down in rows. Sand shinobi came off the walls. Sound shinobi came out of the stands with their blades already out. In the Kage box, the Kazekage's robes came off, and a purple-haired snake was standing there with a kunai to Hiruzen Sarutobi's throat, and the barrier went up around the roof. Naruto smelled him instantly from the arena floor, and his head snapped around. "You!" Kukuku. Orochimaru's grin flashed white across the distance. "Not today, little dragon. Today the old man dies. Do enjoy my gift in the meantime." Because on the far side of the stadium, Gaara of the Sand had dropped his gourd, and he was screaming. "Mother's thirsty," Gaara said, and his voice was 3 voices. "Mother's been thirsty for 12 years. The sand didn't crawl. It erupted. 90,000 tons of it came up out of the arena, out of the gourd, out of the earth itself, and it built. It built up the walls and over the roofs and into the sky, and it took the shape of a thing with too many arms and a tail like a hanging rope of teeth. And when it was done, it stood 200 meters over Konoha, and it laughed at the clouds. The one tail. Shukaku. A desert wearing a body, standing inside a village's walls. Buildings went over. The eastern market collapsed under a footfall. Every shinobi in Konoha turned to look, and every single one of them had the same thought, which was that this was how the village ended. Naruto Uzumaki stood on a rooftop with his hands in his pockets and looked up at it. He cracked his knuckles. He rolled his neck until it popped twice. He grinned. A giant monster? He rolled his sleeves up past the elbow. Perfect. I was getting bored. Sakura on the roof behind him made a strangled noise. Bored? Sakura, go find Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke, keep her alive. You're not going up there alone, Sasuke said. I'm the only one who can. Naruto turned around, and his eyes were slits and his teeth were sharp, and he was still smiling. Watch me, would ya? Both of you. I want somebody to remember this. He pointed both hands at the roof, palms down. The fire that came out of them wasn't an attack. It was thrust, 2 roaring columns hammering into the shingles, and the shingles blew apart. And Naruto Uzumaki went up off that roof like a rocket coming off a pad, straight into the sky, trailing a double stripe of flame 200 meters long. The whole village watched him climb. He leveled off at the height of Shukaku's head, hovering on 2 jets of fire, one boy against something the size of a mountain range. Hey, ugly! Shukaku's eye rolled up. What is this? The beast bellowed, and its breath flattened trees. A gnat? A gnat with a light? Fire dragons roar! The column hit Shukaku in the face and blew its entire lower jaw into a spray of glass. The heat vitrified 200 tons of sand midair, and the fragments came down over the northern district like hail, and every shinobi below dove for cover. It burned it, said Asuma Sarutobi, flat on a roof with his blades out. That's the one tail. He burned the one tail's face off. It'll reform, said Kurenai. It reformed. Sand poured up into the gap and rebuilt the jaw in 4 seconds, and the thing was screaming now. Wind style! Drilling air bullet! Shukaku's chest heaved, and a compressed sphere of wind came out of its mouth with enough pressure to erase a city block. It crossed the distance in half a second, and Naruto opened his chest and inhaled. Everything went silent for 1 heartbeat. The wind bullet bent, spiraled, narrowed, and vanished down his throat, a full-power tailed beast air attack, drawn in and swallowed like water from a cup. Air currents streaming into his mouth from every direction, his body swelled. His skin lit up from inside. The fire around him turned from orange to white and doubled in size, because that's the thing about a furnace. Give it oxygen and it doesn't get full, it gets hungrier. Shukaku actually paused. Down on the ground, 100 shinobi and half the stadium crowd saw a boy drink a hurricane. He ate the wind, said Kiba Inuzuka from behind a wall with his mouth open. Akamaru. Akamaru, he ate the wind. Tamari of the Sand stood on the wall with her fan hanging forgotten in her hand and her face gone white. That thing has never, nothing stops Gaara. Nothing has ever stopped Gaara. Fire Dragon's talon. Naruto came out on Shukaku's shoulder in a comet and blew 50 meters of it apart. He landed on the skull, boots planted in sand that instantly turned to glass under him, and dropped to one knee to grab hold as the head thrashed. Gaara was in there. Naruto could smell him. A boy, 12 years old, hollowed out, crying somewhere inside 200 meters of monster. "Hey," Naruto shouted into the sand. "Gaara, can you hear me?" "He cannot," Shukaku howled. "He gave himself to me. He has nothing else, no one else." Then somebody lied to him. Naruto stood up on the beast's head, and both fists came up, and the fire crawled up his arms and over his shoulders and began to spin. "You're just throwing a tantrum," he roared, and now the flames on his arms twisted together, two spirals winding into one column, brighter and brighter, until the light of it was visible from the far side of the land of fire. "That's all this is. A kid screaming because nobody held him." Every window in the Eastern District cracked from the heat. Crimson Lotus, exploding flame blade. He drove it down into Shukaku's skull. The attack went in like a drill made of pressure and light, and it did not stop at the surface. It bored. Layer after layer of packed sand exploded outward in vitrified sheets, the column punching down through the neck, through the chest cavity, hunting the core. And inside, the thing that had been sitting in a boy's stomach for 12 years began to scream in a register that made every dog in the village howl at once. The sand shell came apart from the inside out. 200 meters of desert blew apart over Konoha in a ring of fire and glass, and the shock wave rolled out flat over the rooftops and knocked every shinobi in the village off their feet. And for one long moment, the entire sky above the hidden leaf was gold. Then the glass rain came down over the tree line in a shimmering curtain, and there was silence. And in the middle of a smoking crater at the edge of the forest, Gaara of the desert lay on his back with his gourd gone, his armor gone, his mother gone, and no sand left within 100 meters that hadn't been turned to glass. Boots crunched toward him over the wreckage. Naruto Uzumaki stopped a meter away, chest heaving, hair standing on end, 3 ribs cracked, scarf singed at both ends and still faintly glowing where fire clung to the scales. Gaara looked up at him with green eyes that had never once been afraid. He was afraid now. "You," Gaara said, and his voice was very small. "You should hate me. I killed." His hand shook against the glass. "I exist only to kill. I fight to prove I exist. That is all there is." Naruto crouched down in front of him. "Nah," he said, "that's just the only thing anybody ever told you." He reached out. Gaara flinched, actually flinched, the way a beaten animal flinches, and Naruto put a hand on top of his head and left it there. "You're warm," Gaara whispered. "Yeah, I run hot." "Why would you touch me?" "Because nobody else ever did." Naruto's grin came up crooked and tired. "That's a garbage reason to hurt the whole world, you know? Being lonely." He stood and he pulled Gaara up by the front of his shirt and set him on his feet and steadied him when his knees went. "Look, I don't know how to say this fancy, but if you don't have the courage to change things, then you might as well die. And you've got the courage. You've just been pointing it the wrong direction your whole life." Gaara stood in a field of glass and did not say anything at all. His silence was louder than any threat he had ever made in his life. And his brother and sister, arriving at a dead run, expecting to find a corpse and a monster, stopped at the edge of the crater and watched their brother stand still under a stranger's hand and cry without making a sound. "Take him home," Naruto said to Temari, "and tell your dad, wait, actually, I think the snake guy killed your dad, sorry." "What?" "Yeah, he was wearing his face all day. It was gross." Naruto turned toward the stadium and his face changed. Speaking of which, the barrier on the roof came down as he was running, and he was still 400 meters out when he smelled it and stopped so fast he skidded. "Tobacco. Paper. Blood." "No," said Naruto. "No, no, no." They didn't let him up on the roof until it was over. Hiruzen Sarutobi had gone out the way old lions do, hard, on his feet, with his enemy's arms sealed and dead in a Shinigami's grip and a smile on his face. Orochimaru fled the village with 2 ruined arms in a hole where his ambition used to sit. Naruto sat on the roof beside the body with his hands hanging between his knees for a long time. Kakashi found him there at dusk and sat down next to him without saying a word for 10 minutes. "He told me about the scarf," Naruto finally said. "When I was 7, he was the first person who ever told me somebody loved me." His voice went thin. "He was so old, Sensei, and he still went up there, against a Sannin, alone. He would say that's what the hat means. I wasn't fast enough." "You were fighting a tailed beast, Naruto. You won alone, at 13. Kakashi's eye came around. "There isn't a shinobi alive who could have done both, And I include the man on the ground behind us. Naruto pulled his scarf up over his mouth and nose. He's in my guild, he said, muffled. Even now. You don't stop being in it just because you're gone. Kakashi looked at the sky for a while. No, he said. I don't suppose you do. The funeral was held in the rain 3 days later, and half of Konoha stood in it in black. Naruto stood at the front with white cloth at his throat, the only bright thing in the whole square. And every raindrop that touched his skin turned to steam and rose off him in a slow column, so that the boy at the front of the crowd stood inside a pillar of white vapor that reached above the rooftops. Nobody crossed the street to avoid him after that day. Sasuke Uchiha broke 3 weeks later, and Naruto saw it coming and couldn't stop it, and that's the part he'd carry. It started when Itachi Uchiha walked into Konoha with a man the size of a door. They came looking for something they didn't get, and they left through the north gate with 3 broken jonin behind them. And on the road out, Sasuke found his brother and threw everything he had at him. And Itachi caught his wrist and looked at him with those red eyes and said the worst thing anybody had ever said to him. You are not even worth killing. And then, you aren't the one I came for. Sasuke's whole world tipped over because he knew who Itachi had come for. Everybody knew. The whole village had watched a boy in a white scarf swallow a hurricane over the rooftops, and now even his brother, his one purpose, the only measurement he had ever used, had come to Konoha and walked past him. Naruto got there 90 seconds later, blew a hole through the corridor wall, and went straight for the Uchiha in the black cloak with his fists already lit. He never got the fight. Itachi took one look at him, one long look, and something moved behind those eyes that wasn't fear and wasn't scorn. So, Itachi said, it's true, there is a slayer in the leaf. A what? But they were gone in a swirl of crows, and Sasuke was on his knees on the floor of a hallway, and he wouldn't look at anyone for 4 days. The Sound Four came for him on the 5th night. The curse mark went on his shoulder in a dirty room at the edge of the village, and by midnight, Sasuke Uchiha was walking out the north gate with 4 sound shinobi around him and a bag on his back. Sakura stood in the middle of the road in the dark and begged. He said thank you and knocked her out and laid her on the bench, which was the last kind thing he did for anybody for a long time. Naruto hit the gate 40 minutes behind him with his boots smoking. Shikamaru! He came into the mission office at a dead run. Squad. Now, who's fast? Naruto. Who's fast? They went out at dawn. Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, Neji, and Naruto was gone from the formation inside of 8 kilometers because he ran on the ground, and he ran flat out, and nothing else in the land of fire ran like that. The Sound Four tried to stop him. Only one of them got in the way in time. A huge one, 6 arms, laughing about how he'd hold the line. And Naruto did not slow down, did not talk, did not name a technique. He shouldered through him at full sprint and left him embedded in the trunk of a tree 11 meters up. Handle the rest, he yelled back over his shoulder. Neji, you got the fate speech? Neji Hyuga's Byakugan came on, and there was something in his face now that had never been there before. I have the fate speech. Good, man. The Nara plan worked. Kiba and Choji held. Neji fought Kidomaru through the trees and won it ugly and lived. And Naruto Uzumaki ran 200 kilometers in a day and a half and came out of the tree line at the Valley of the End in the pouring rain. The 2 statues stood 100 meters tall on either side of the falls. The first Hokage on the left, Madara Uchiha on the right, 2 dead men glaring at each other across the water forever. Sasuke stood on Madara's head. Naruto landed on Hashirama's. The rain came down in sheets between them, and where it hit Naruto, it did not land. It hissed into steam a hand's width from his skin, so that he stood inside a rolling cloud of his own making, and the stone under his feet was dry in a circle 2 meters across. You came, Sasuke said. Course I came. Naruto's voice carried over the falls. You're my guild. Stop saying that word, make me. Sasuke turned around, and his eyes were red with 3 spinning marks in them now, and the cursed seal was already crawling. He walked past me, Naruto. His voice was shaking. My brother, he came into my village and he came for you. The black mark spread up his throat and across half his face. You ate a Sanin's jutsu in front of me. You broke the one tail over the rooftops while I hid behind a wall. Every single time I've measured myself, you've been the ruler. His fist closed. I can't stand next to you. I have to leave to become anything. That's stupid. That's the truth. It's stupid and it's the truth. Both can be true. Naruto shouted back. You think I don't get it? You want to be strong. Great. Fantastic. I love that about you. He jabbed a finger across the gap. But you're going to a guy who eats people to get it. He's not going to make you strong, Sasuke. He's going to wear you. I punched him in the face. I've seen the inside of his mouth. He's a lizard. Then I'll take his power and I'll kill him too. You'll be dead by then. Then I'll be dead. Sasuke's scream tore out of him. I will cut this bond, Naruto. I need power. You have power you don't even understand. You don't even know where yours came from. And I have to take mine for myself. The rain came down. Naruto reached up and closed his hand around the white scarf and held it once, the way he always did. You want to go? He said, and his voice dropped low and level and terrible. You're going to have to kill me. His pupils stretched into slits. The steam around him doubled. But I'm not going to let you throw your life away. Sasuke's wings tore out of his back. Here is the thing about the Valley of the End. After that night, for 11 years, the water at the base of the falls ran warm. Sasuke came off Madara's head at a speed that had nothing to do with a genin. Curse Mark Level 2 is a bargain with something old, and it pays out fast. His skin went gray, his hair went long, his wings caught the rain and threw it off in sheets, and he crossed 100 meters in a blink. His fist caught Naruto in the jaw and knocked him clean off the statue. Naruto hit the water 40 meters below, and it exploded into a geyser of steam on impact. Sasuke came down after him through his own vapor with a kunai out. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist! The two blows met and the shockwave blew the surface of the river out in a flat circle 100 meters wide, and the riverbed showed for a full second underneath. They fought across the water. Sasuke was fast, real, true, frightening fast, and he was smart, and he was fighting with the desperation of a person who has decided that losing means being nothing. He put a kunai through Naruto's shoulder. He landed a spinning heel into his temple that would have caved a normal skull. He got behind him twice. Fire style Dragon Flame Bomb! Naruto ate it, snarling, and used it. The flame went in and came straight back out. Thanks for the snack! Fire Dragon's Roar! Sasuke got a wing up and lost half of it, and the column of fire went past him and hit the cliff wall, and 200 tons of rock came down into the river with a noise like the world cracking. The water started to boil, not near them. All of it. The river between the statues went from cold mountain runoff to a rolling steam bath, fish coming up dead, mist screaming off the surface in columns that climbed higher than the falls. The rain above them stopped being rain and turned to hot fog before it could land. Heat lightning began to flicker in the clouds. Actual lightning, born out of the thermals of two children fighting. 6 kilometers away, Kakashi Hatake stopped dead on a treetop with his summoned dog beside him and looked at the sky and knew. Faster, he said. 20 kilometers north, in a hotel room, a white-haired man with a huge scroll on his back set down his cup and walked to the window and stared south with his mouth slightly open. That's not chakra, said Jiraiya of the Sannin. What in all the hells is that? Sasuke drove Naruto through a boulder. Naruto came out of the rubble and put him through a cliff. They met in the middle of the river again, forehead to forehead, both bleeding, both grinning like animals. You've gotten strong, Naruto said. I've always been strong. Yeah, and you never once believed it. That's your whole problem. Sasuke roared and shoved off, skidding backward across the water, and his left hand came down. The lightning that gathered in it was wrong. Not the clean white of the Chidori. This was black, shot through with purple, screaming instead of chirping, and it ran up his arm to the shoulder and kept climbing. Black Chidori! He shot up to the top of Madara's head in one leap. He stood there in silhouette with 1,000 black birds screaming in his fist and the rain flashing to steam on his shoulders. This ends it. And down in the water, Naruto Uzumaki stopped moving. He stood very still, and something in him reached down past everything he'd ever known and grabbed hold of what had been sitting at the bottom of him since he was an infant, sleeping against a chest the size of a hillside. The steam around him blew outward and vanished. Scales came up his forearms, golden red, hard, edged like a lizard's hide, running from his wrists to his elbows and up over his shoulders and along both cheekbones. His hair rose straight up in the thermal draft. His eyes went full slit, gold and black, no white left in them at all. His teeth were a mouth of points, and the heat that came out of him wasn't heat anymore. It was weather. Dragon Force, Naruto said, and his voice had two tones in it, one of them very old. The waterfall stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. 6,000 tons of falling water simply ceased to arrive, turning to vapor in midair 20 meters above the pool, so that the cliff face had a river pouring off it that never reached the bottom. The pool itself boiled dry in a widening ring. The air over the valley caught fire in ribbons, long, curling, drifting lines of flame hanging in nothing, burning without fuel. Every shinobi within 3 kilometers stopped whatever they were doing. Kiba Inuzuka, on a stretcher 2 valleys over, sat up screaming that something was coming. Neji Hyuga's Byakugan flared on by reflex, and he tore it off again with a shout. Because whatever was standing in the Valley of the End was too bright to look at with those eyes. Shikamaru Nara, bleeding in the dirt, looked south at a column of gold light rising over the tree line and started laughing weakly. Jiraiya was already running. At the top of the statue, Sasuke Uchiha stood with a fistful of black lightning and felt his own killing intent get pushed back down his throat. Naruto looked up at him. Golden eyes in a boiling valley. Sasuke. What? You want to walk into that pit? Fine. The flame around him roared up in a pillar, and every ribbon of fire in the sky bent inward toward him. But you're not walking in alone. I'm coming with you every single time. Forever. You'll never get rid of me. Sasuke's face broke, and then he screamed and dove. He came off Madara's head in a full-body plunge, black Chidori first, the sound of it drowning the valley, the trail behind him tearing the steam into a corkscrew, and Naruto Uzumaki set his feet on a dry riverbed and pulled every scrap of fire in his body into a single point in front of his fists. Dragon Slayer's secret art. The light narrowed. The valley went white. Crimson Lotus, Phoenix Sword. He became the attack. Body, magic, everything. A lance of gold-red flame no wider than a spear point, launched upward at a speed that left a vacuum behind it. One boy shaped into one edge. The two attacks met 80 meters above the dry pool. For a moment, the air between them refused to exist. That is the only honest way to say it. There was a sphere of absolute nothing where the flame and the lightning touched, a bubble with no sound in it, and then it came apart. The fire ate the lightning. It didn't overpower it. It didn't cancel it. The black Chidori went into that gold point and got drawn in, pulled apart, swallowed the same way a fireball had gone down a 7-year-old's throat in the woods outside Konoha, the same way a corrosive Sanin flame had gone down in the Forest of Death, the same way a hurricane had gone down over the rooftops. Naruto Uzumaki ate the thing that was meant to kill him. He always had. And the light hit the curse mark. Sasuke's whole body arched. The black marks on his skin went red, then white, then they began to burn off him. The snake seal on his shoulder shrieking, actually shrieking, a thin high sound like a kettle as the purifying heat found it and would not let go. The wings came apart into ash. The gray drained out of his skin. The marks retreated across his chest and his throat and his face, back to the shoulder, back to the seal, and then the seal itself blackened and flaked and blew away in the updraft, leaving behind nothing at all but singed skin and the smell of burnt paper. The blast wave flattened the tree line for 2 kilometers in every direction. The steam went up in a column visible from Konoha's walls. And then the valley was still, and there was no water in the pool, and the rain came back down onto hot stone and hissed. Sasuke fell. He fell out of the sky with his eyes open and his Sharingan gone and his shoulder bare, and he was crying, and he wasn't sure when that had started. Naruto caught him 10 meters off the rock. They came down together into the dry riverbed, and Naruto took the landing on one knee with an arm across his friend's back, and the last of the scales faded off his forearms and his hair fell back down over his eyes. "Hey," Naruto said. Sasuke stared up at him. "It's gone," Sasuke whispered. He got a shaking hand up to his own shoulder and found smooth skin. "You burned it out. You burned it." His breath hitched. "He put it in me and you just Burned it. Yep. Why? 'Cause it was in you. Naruto sat down heavily in the steaming rock and pulled Sasuke against his shoulder and started laughing, and it hurt, and he did it anyway. Man, you hit hard. Look at my face. Sakura's gonna kill you. Sasuke made a sound that was half sob and half laugh and buried it in the front of a scorched orange jacket. I was going to leave. I know. I would have done it. I know. Naruto's hand thumped once on his back. You don't get to. That's what a guild is, jerk. You don't get a vote. The rain came down on both of them, and only one of them got wet. Naruto Uzumaki walked out of the Valley of the End at dawn with Sasuke Uchiha unconscious across his shoulders. He was bleeding from a hole in his shoulder, a split above his eye, and something along his ribs he'd rather not look at. He had walked 11 kilometers before Kakashi found him, and he refused, flatly and without discussion, to let anyone else carry the load. The white scarf trailed down his back, wet at the edges, and where the fire still clung in the weave of it, the scales glowed faintly, on and off, like coals settling in a grate. He was grinning the whole way. He grinned when Sakura came screaming down the road with her fists already up, and then broke into tears 3 steps from him. He grinned when Kakashi read the burn line across half the forest and said nothing at all for 2 kilometers. He grinned when Jiraiya of the Sannin dropped out of a tree in front of him, looked him up and down, and said, "Kid, where did you learn to breathe fire?" And Naruto said, "A guy," and kept walking. And Jiraiya stood in the road for a full minute afterward with his hands in his hair. The gate came up out of the morning fog at 6:15. The guard on duty was a chunin named Kotetsu, who had been up all night, and who saw a 13-year-old boy come out of the mist, carrying another boy on his back, steaming in the cold, 3 separate wounds still open, scarf glowing at the ends. Kotetsu stood up so fast he knocked over his own chair. Naruto Uzumaki said nothing for once in his entire life. He nodded once and walked past him, through the gates, up the middle of the main road, and the village woke up around him. Windows opening, doors coming ajar, a shopkeeper stopping halfway through his awning, an old woman with a folding chair on her balcony standing up. Nobody crossed the street. Every single one of them stayed exactly where they were and watched him carry his friend home. And somewhere in that crowd, a small boy tugged his mother's sleeve and asked what he was, and his mother, who had been afraid of that child for 11 years, said the only thing she could think of. He's ours. Far away, past the borders, past the desert, past the sea, in a place with no name on any map, something enormous stirred in the dark under a mountain, opened one eye the color of a forge, and lifted its head toward the land of fire, because it had felt dragon force in the world for the first time in 13 years. Kotetsu Hagane picked his chair up off the ground, about 10 seconds too late for it to matter, because by then, Naruto Uzumaki was already 40 meters up the main road with Sasuke Uchiha across his shoulders, and the mist closing behind him like a curtain nobody had the nerve to hold open. The rain kept coming down. It kept failing to land. Every drop that got within a hand's width of that boy left the world as white vapor, so that what came up the center of Konoha at 6:15 in the morning was a column of steam with a 13-year-old walking inside it and a white scarf trailing off the back of it, glowing faintly at the ends where the woven scales still held fire. Shopkeepers stopped with their awning ropes half pulled. A woman opening her shutters put both hands on the sill and stayed there. 3 genin on the way to a D rank flattened themselves against a wall without discussing it, and none of them could have told you why. Nobody crossed the street. That was the difference, and everybody in that road felt it. 3 years earlier, they would have pulled their children indoors. That morning they stood exactly where they were and let him pass, and a small boy tugged his mother's sleeve and asked what he was, and his mother, who had been afraid of that child for 11 years, said the only thing she could think of. He's ours. The hospital doors opened before he reached them because someone inside had been watching from the 3rd floor with a mirror and a pair of very shaky hands. Naruto walked through, laid Sasuke down on the first gurney anyone rolled at him, and then stood there with a hole through his shoulder and blood in his eyebrow and said the first words out of him in 11 kilometers. He's got a punctured lung, 2 broken fingers, and something wrong with his left eye. Fix that one first. He'll be mean about it. Then he sat down on the floor and let a mednin start cutting his jacket off, and he grinned at her the whole time, which she later described to her husband as the single most unsettling experience of her career. Sasuke Uchiha woke up at noon. The first thing he did was reach for his own shoulder because there was something missing on it, and his body had noticed before his brain did. His fingers found smooth skin, warm, unmarked, faintly pink like a scar that had healed 20 years ago, where the 3 curved marks of Orochimaru's seal had sat for weeks, doing their slow work, whispering their slow offer. There was nothing at all. He kept touching it. He touched it for a full minute. "Yeah, it's really gone," Naruto said from the next bed. "I checked twice while you were out. Sakura yelled at me for lifting your gown." Sasuke turned his head. Naruto was sitting up with bandaging around his shoulder and a strip of it across his forehead, one leg already off the mattress, wearing the expression of a man doing sums about how far the window was. "Lie down," Sasuke said. "Make me. You have a hole in you." "2. Naruto said it with pride. "One of them's from your knee, by the way. Who needs somebody?" Sasuke put his head back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling for a while. Out in the hall, a cart went by. Somebody was arguing about bed assignments. The light through the blinds cut the room into strips. "I was going to kill you," he said. "You were going to try." "Naruto, I know." Naruto stopped fidgeting, which for him was a bigger event than most explosions. "I know what you were going to do. You were going to cut it off clean so it couldn't hurt anymore. I've met guys who did that. They all smell the same, like an empty house." Sasuke's throat worked. His eyes were wet and he despised that fact with everything he had. And Naruto watched it happen with the total absence of tact that had defined his entire life. "Don't cry," Naruto said. "Get angry, channel it, then aim it at me and we'll see what happens." Sasuke laughed. It came out wrong, cracked down the middle, more of a cough than a laugh, and it was the first real one in 7 years. "You're an animal. You say that like it's an insult." Naruto lay back down, finally, out of what looked like pure charity. "Next time you want to leave, tell me first. I'll come with you. We'll go somewhere with better food. There's no place with better food according to you. There's no place with better ramen." Naruto held up a finger. "Different claim." The door opened at 3 in the afternoon, and the man who came through it filled the frame in a way that suggested he had practiced. Jiraiya of the Sannin stood there with a scroll the size of a barrel on his back and looked at the boy in the bed. He looked at the fading scale patterns on Naruto's forearms, gold red, hard-edged, retreating into the skin like a tide going out. He looked at the white scarf hanging off the bedpost with the end still faintly alight, burning nothing, consuming nothing, just sitting there and glowing like coals settling in a grate. He looked at the burn scar, the shape of a bare foot melted into the hospital floor tile beside the bed. Then he sat down in the chair with the face of a man who had just added a large and unexpected figure to a very long column. "So you're the dragon slayer everybody keeps whispering about," Jiraiya said. Naruto squinted at him. "Who are you?" The silence that followed had actual weight to it. Sasuke from the next bed made a sound into his pillow. "I'm Jiraiya," Jiraiya said. "The Toad Sage of the legendary Sannin." "Huh!" Naruto sniffed once, twice with his head tipped. "You smell like sake, ink, hair oil, and 3 different perfumes that aren't yours. Are you the one who trained the 4th Hokage?" "Yes!" Jiraiya sat forward with an unmistakable air of relief. "Yes, that's me. Thank you. At least somebody in this village." "Cool. Can you teach me to breathe fire hotter?" Jiraiya opened his mouth. He closed it. He rubbed the bridge of his nose with 2 fingers and looked at Sasuke, who was pretending to be asleep and doing a terrible job. "He asked me for my name," Jiraiya said to nobody, "and then he asked me for a fire lesson, and I don't know which one I'm more offended about." "So can you?" "Kid, I've read your file twice. You broke the one tail over the rooftops of this village at 13 years old, and then you walked out of the Valley of the End on foot carrying an Uchiha. You do not need me to teach you to burn things." Jiraiya's face went somewhere else then, somewhere older, and the room got heavier for it. "You need me to teach you what to do when burning things isn't enough. because something's moving toward you and it has 10 people in it, and every single one of them is worth a village. Naruto's eyes had changed. The pupils were long and narrow, the way they went when he locked in. "Tell me about them on the road," he said. "You haven't agreed to a road." "I agreed 30 seconds ago. You just weren't listening." Naruto swung both legs off the bed. "I gotta go see the new Hokage first." Tsunade Senju had been in the chair for 11 days and had already read every mission report Team 7 had ever filed, in order, at one sitting, with a bottle of sake that she opened halfway through and finished before the end. The reports got harder to believe the further in she went. By the land of waves, she was making notes. By the forest of death, she had stopped making notes. By the valley of the end, she had summoned 3 jonin to describe the sight to her in person. And none of the 3 had the vocabulary, and one of them had cried. So when the door banged open and a bandaged 13-year-old walked in, radiating enough heat to bend the air over her desk lamp, she was braced. She was braced for a monster. She was braced for a weapon. She was braced, honestly, for something with an angle. "Hi," Naruto said. "You're the healer lady. Granny Tsunade, right?" Shizune dropped Tauntaun. The pig hit the floor with a squeal and shot under a chair, and the temperature in that office went from wary to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. Tsunade's hand closed on the edge of her desk, and the desk, solid ironwood, older than the 3rd Hokage's hat, creaked audibly. "What?" she said. "Did you just call me?" "Granny," Naruto beamed. "Because you're old, right? Jiraiya said you're the same age as him and he's ancient. And also you smell like sake and hospital soap and about 40 years of..." "Shizune, hold my earrings. My lady, he's a patient. He's about to be several." She threw a punch that would have gone through a load-bearing wall. Naruto caught it on both palms, and his hands lit up on contact, and Tsunade felt the heat come up her forearm and stopped just short of blistering because he had decided that it would, and she looked at her own fist, held motionless in the grip of a child, and something in her chest went very still. "Huh?" Naruto said. "You hit way harder than the old man did." He let go and shook his hands out. "I like you. You're in my guild." "What is a guild?" "It's everybody I'd burn a country down for." He said it the way other people say the weather is fine. "Kakashi Sensei's in it. Sakura and Sasuke and Iruka Sensei. Old man Hokage's still in it even though he's gone. You don't get out just because you died. Now you." He shrugged. "You put yourself in it when you took the hat? That's how the hat works." Tsunade Senju stood in the middle of her own office with her fists still up and her whole life rearranging behind her eyes. "Get out," she said. "Go train. Come back taller." "You got it, Granny." "Get out." The goodbyes took an afternoon. Sakura came to him at the training ground with her sleeves already rolled and told him she was going to study under Tsunade and that she was going to learn to put people back together. And that the next time somebody hit her, she was going to hit them into a different postal district. Naruto listened to all of it with his arms folded and then said the only thing worth saying, which was that she should hurry up because he was going to need a medic who wasn't scared of him, and she was the only one on the list. Kakashi walked him to the gate and gave him 3 pieces of advice, 2 of them useful, and then handed over a small orange book, saying it was for the road. And Naruto looked at it and said he would eat it, and Kakashi said he knew, and that was the point. Sasuke came out on crutches he had refused 4 times and then accepted when Sakura threatened him. He and Naruto looked at each other in front of the gate for a while. "Get strong," Sasuke said. "I'm always strong. I'll get worse." Naruto grinned. "Don't let anybody give you anything free while I'm gone. It's always got a snake in it." That was all of it. That was everything in about 9 words, which was the correct number. And then at dusk, on the road out, while Naruto was in the middle of a shouting match with Jiraiya about whether the training route involved any boats, and Jiraiya was being cagey in a way that told Naruto everything, Ino Yamanaka came down the road at a run with her sandals in one hand. She stopped in front of him. Her hair was coming out of its tie. She had flour on her forearm from her mother's kitchen, and she had clearly come straight out of a door without explaining herself to anybody. "You'd better come back," she said. Naruto looked at her. There was a beat there. Something moved across it, through the dust and the low orange light and the smell of somebody's dinner 3 houses back. And neither of them had a word for it yet, and both of them registered its arrival with total clarity. "I never leave the guild behind," he said. "You'd better not leave me behind." "That's what I just said." "It's really not." Ino shoved his shoulder, which was still bandaged, which made him wince, which made her go pale and then furious about going pale. "Ugh! Go! Get out of here!" He went. Jiraiya took one look at Ino's face as they walked away and had the good sense to keep his mouth shut for a full kilometer, which was a personal record. Ino Yamanaka stood in the middle of the road with her sandals in her hand and watched a column of steam get smaller against the sunset. And then she went home and did the dishes very loudly. 2.5 years is a long time to be away from a village and a short time to become something the world has no defense for. Jiraiya's plan had one line in it. The fire was already there. The power was already there. What Naruto lacked was the ability to think and burn at the same time, and everything they did for 30 months came off that hook. It started with toads. Blood on the palm, hand signs, slam it down. It's a contract, kid. It's the oldest one I've got. Summoning jutsu. The smoke that came off that hilltop went up 60 meters, and out of it came a mountain with a pipe in its mouth, and Gamabunta's eye came down and found the boy standing between his own toes, scales on the forearms, gold reptilian slits where a 13-year-old's blue eyes ought to be, heat coming off the shoulders in a shimmer that bent the trees behind him, and the scarf, the white one, the woven one, snapping in an updraft of the boy's own making with fire crawling along its ends. Every instinct in 600 years of amphibian life fired at once and moved the toad boss 3 meters backward down the slope. "What," Gamabunta said, "is this?" "My student," Jiraiya said. "That is a slayer. I'm aware. You bring a slayer to my mountain." "Hi." Naruto waved with the hand that wasn't on fire. "You're huge. Can I ride on you? Do you eat bugs? Do you eat fire? What's a slayer?" Gamabunta looked down at him for a long moment. Then the giant toad exhaled a lungful of pipe smoke, which Naruto immediately leaned into and inhaled with an expression of guilty joy, and the toad boss made a sound that shook loose gravel off the ridge. "He is going to be a problem for the whole world," Gamabunta said. "Sign him." The first new technique took 9 months. Jiraiya set it up the way he set up everything, which was by being irritating on purpose. He tied a bell to a tree in a clearing and said the exercise was to burn the string and leave the bell unmarked, and Naruto vaporized the tree. They started again. Naruto burned the tree. They started again with a rock and no tree. Naruto glassed the rock. By the 4th month, he could put a thread of flame through the string. By the 6th month, he could put a ring of it around the bell and hold the ring there, spinning 5 centimeters off the metal without a scorch mark on the bronze. By the 9th month, he could throw 7 rings at once and lock a diving hawk in mid-air so it hung there furious and unhurt in a cylinder of fire while Jiraiya walked underneath it with a cup of tea. "Name it," Jiraiya said. Naruto looked at the rings. He looked at the bird, which was screaming at him. "Fire Dragon's flame cage," he said, and let the hawk go, and it took a piece out of his ear on the way past, and he laughed about it for an hour. "That one matters more than the roar," Jiraiya said that night, over a fire that Naruto kept nibbling at like a man picking at a snack bowl. "You understand that? Any idiot can be a bomb. There'll be a day you have to stop somebody without ending them. Their kid'll be watching, or they'll be somebody's kid." "I know," Naruto said. "That's why I learned it." Then he added, with his mouth full of somebody else's campfire, "Doesn't mean I'll always use it." Jiraiya looked at him across the coals and decided, at that exact moment, that he was going to be honest with this boy about absolutely everything, because lying to something like that was a way to die. The second technique nobody planned. It happened on the coast of a country whose name never made it into the report. Month 19. A slaver ring working a fishing village, 40 children in a hold, and a boat that was already leaving when Naruto came over the dune. He got the kids out. He got all of them out. But one of the crew put a blade through a girl's shoulder on the way, and Naruto heard the sound she made, and something in him came off its hinges. Jiraiya, from 400 meters up the beach, saw the boy stop moving. He saw the scales come up, arms, shoulders, jaw. He saw the eyes go gold with no white left, and then he saw the entire visible world go white too. There was no roar. There was no fist. Naruto Uzumaki stood still in the surf and detonated in every direction at once. A full-body release of dragon force with nowhere selected, no target, no aim, just everything he was going outward at the same time. The ships came apart into burning ribs. 200 meters of beach fused into a plate of glass so smooth it held the reflection of the clouds. The water went out and came back and hissed for 6 minutes. The children were behind a rock outcrop. Naruto had put them behind first. Every one of them was fine. Every single crewman was ash. And the narration of it in Jiraiya's own private notebook stopped mid-sentence and never picked back up. Jiraiya walked out onto the glass afterward and stood in the middle of it for a long time. He didn't ask what it was. He didn't ask what it was called. "You gonna name that?" he finally said. Naruto was crouched by the girl with the shoulder wound, holding a sealed compress in place with hands he had gotten cool enough to touch her with, and his eyes were still gold. And he didn't look up. "Not yet," he said. "They took 11 boats over 30 months. "All right," Jiraiya said, boarding number 1. "The Land of Rivers has an old shrine with a chakra suppression seal. I want you to try to eat, and the crossing is only 40 minutes. Naruto made it 9 steps up the gangplank before his whole body went the color of a dead fish. "Oh no, kid, it's going up and down." He got both hands onto the rail and hung over it like a coat sliding off a hook. "Why does it do both? Who decided? You punched Orochimaru out of a forest." "I know," Naruto said without looking up from the water. By boat number 4, Jiraiya had stopped commenting and started charging money. Sailors would come along the rail to look at the boy who could reduce a coastline to glass, currently weeping over a bucket, and Jiraiya would collect 2 coins a head and call it educational. By boat number 9, Naruto had begun making threats about the ocean personally, and the crew had started a betting pool on how long it would take him to try. Nobody won that pool. He came very close twice. He wrote letters the entire time. His handwriting looked like a spider had fallen into an inkwell and then fought its way out with dignity. He wrote to Kakashi about fire control and got back 3 pages that were half technique notes and half nonsense about a novel. He wrote to Sakura and got back medical drawings of the human shoulder with an arrow pointing at a joint and the words "Stop dislocating this." He wrote to Sasuke exactly once in month 8, and it was mostly a drawing. 2 stick figures on top of 2 big statues in the rain, one of them on fire, both of them clearly yelling, with a note in the margin that said "You hit pretty hard, jerk." Sasuke kept in a book. He would have denied that under torture. He wrote to Ino more than anybody, and those were the shortest. Went up a mountain, ate a volcano vent, tasted like eggs. Old man says hi. He's lying. He doesn't know I'm writing. Jiraiya made me learn a cage technique. It's for not killing people. I'm good at it now. Don't tell Sakura. She'll be smug. Saw a flower here I never saw before. Purple, 4 petals, smells like pepper. I drew it. The drawing, it's in the envelope. And once in month 22, 4 words on a piece of paper torn out of a receipt book. "This place is loud and I hate it." Ino wrote back to every one of them. Her handwriting was infuriatingly good. Most of her letters were long, full of village gossip and complaints about her mother, and one extremely detailed account of Kiba falling into a compost pit. The one Naruto folded into a square and carried inside his jacket for 8 months, though, was 2 lines. "Pepper flower is a sarcoline. You drew it upside down. I put the real one in a pot on the shop counter, and I'm keeping it alive until you get back, so hurry up." He read that one on a boat, over a bucket, and it was the only crossing on record where he smiled through the whole thing. Near the end, in a rented room over a bar in a border town, Jiraiya laid a sheet of paper on the table and put his hand flat on it and left it there. 10 people, he said. They call themselves Akatsuki. They work in pairs, all of them S rank, all of them missing 9 from real villages. Deidara out of Uwa blows up cities as a hobby. Sasori of the Red Sand, 300 human puppets, killed a Kazakage. Hiden Kakuzu, Kasame, Itachi Uchiha you've met. Yeah, Naruto's teeth showed. He said I was a slayer. He was right. Jiraiya tapped the page. They're collecting the tailed beasts. They want them all. They're going to try for Gaara, and they're going to try for the Eight Tails, and eventually they're going to come for this village because this village has you in it, and they don't know what you are, which is the only advantage we own. Who's running it? That's the part that's kept me awake since spring. Jiraiya's voice went flat. There's a man behind the man. He's got a Sharingan and a name that shouldn't still be attached to a heartbeat. Say it. Madara Uchiha. The lamp on the table guttered because the air in the room had begun to move. Naruto Uzumaki sat back in his chair. He reached up and closed his hand around the scarf at his throat. One time, the way he always did before anything worth doing. Good, he said. I've been wanting a real fight. He came home at 16 through the East Gate on a morning in spring. He was taller. Nothing else about the silhouette had changed. The headband still on the left bicep, never the forehead, because the scarf came first, and the scarf always came first. The jacket was orange and black now, and had been repaired at both elbows by somebody with no talent for it. The eyes were the same blue, and had gotten sharper in a way that had nothing to do with color, like a tool that had been used hard and refused to dull. Izumo and Kotetsu, on gate duty, both stood up. Kotetsu didn't knock over the chair this time. He would say later that he had been practicing. The village saw him come up the main road and did something it had never done for anybody, which was that it got loud in the right direction. A vegetable seller shouted his name. 2 kids came off a wall and ran alongside him for a block, screaming questions. An old woman on a balcony, the same one with the folding chair, who had crossed the street to avoid him for 11 years and then started coming out at midnight to watch him paint the sky over the monument, leaned over the rail and said, "You got taller, you awful boy." And Naruto laughed so hard he had to stop walking. Sakura found him first in the middle of the road and hugged him hard enough to move his ribs. "You're strong," he said, holding her at arm's length and looking at her like produce. "Like, actually, your grip's different. Your feet are set different. What does she teach you? How to break a man's spine with one finger and then rebuild it. That's horrifying." He was delighted. "You're on my left side from now on." Sasuke came down the steps of the Uchiha district 10 minutes later, hands in his pockets, and the two of them stood in front of each other in a street that had grown suddenly very interested in its own business. "You're late," Sasuke said. "You waited." And that was the whole conversation, and it held every single thing either of them would have needed 1,000 words to say badly. Then Ino came around the corner from Yamanaka Flowers with a watering can in one hand and stopped in the middle of the street. She'd grown up. She was in purple, and her hair was long down her back, and she had the arms of somebody who had spent 2.5 years hauling soil bags and learning to put her mind inside other people's heads. Her face did all the work before her mouth got involved. Naruto watched it happen from 10 meters away and read every line of it, because he had a nose that could track a heartbeat through fog, and he had been paying attention to this particular one for years. He walked up to her. He didn't do anything with his hands. He said the thing that had been sitting in his chest since a road at dusk 2.5 years earlier. "I thought about you the whole time I was gone," which was annoying. Ino Yamanaka looked up at him. "Good," she said. That was the beginning of it. It didn't get a ceremony. It got about 400 small moments instead, and every one of them was better. It got her sitting cross-legged on the roof of the flower shop at night with a bowl of rice crackers in her lap while he ran control drills, thread after thread of flame going out across the street, 40 meters, 60, threading a needle-width hole through one leaf on one branch and coming back over and over, and Ino calling out numbers like a scorekeeper and taking off points for style. It got him showing up at the counter of the shop at 4 in the afternoon, covered in burns from his own training, with his eyebrows singed off again, and no explanation and nowhere else he wanted to be. And Ino handing him a wet cloth without looking up from the ledger and saying, "Sit down. You smell like a house fire." It got the pot on the counter with the pepper-smelling purple flower in it. 3 years old, thriving, which he noticed inside of 9 seconds on the day he came home, and which made him go strangely still, and it got the wagon. Because 11 days after his return, the news came in from Suna that the Kazekage had been taken, and Team Kakashi went out at speed, and the fastest route involved a merchant cart on the old road across the eastern flats. Ino was on the escort for the first 40 kilometers with her father's squad, and she got to sit across from Naruto Uzumaki in the back of a supply wagon on a rutted road for 2 hours. He lasted 11 minutes. "Oh," Ino said. "Oh, you're kidding me. I'm fine. You're green. I'm fine." "Naruto," she leaned forward with a joy that was frankly indecent. "You broke a tailed beast over the rooftops when you were 13. "It's the springs," he said into his own knees. "The wheels go over a rock, and then it goes up, and then it comes back down, and then it does it again. You ate a hurricane." The hurricane held still. She laughed for so long that Sakura had to tell her to stop, and then Sakura started, and then even Kakashi's shoulders went, and Naruto rode the rest of the way with his forehead against the tailgate and the white scarf pulled up over his mouth and nose in total surrender. And when they finally hit dirt, he stood up, breathed twice, and was fully restored in the space of 4 seconds, bouncing, cracking his knuckles, asking which direction the enemy was. Ino watched him blaze off across the flats and put her chin on her hand and thought that she had chosen a walking natural disaster and that she had never been more comfortable with a decision in her life. They caught Akatsuki at the mouth of a canyon 3 days later. Deidara was sitting on a clay bird the size of a fishing boat with Gaara's body slung across the wing in front of him. He was chewing. He was, in a broad sense, always chewing. "So you're the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, he called down. "Leader Sama says you're the difficult one. Doesn't look difficult. Looks orange." Naruto's head tipped. He inhaled through his nose once. "You're not the guy who took him," he said. "You're the guy who carried him. Somebody else did the fighting. You just did the taxi." Deidara's face went the color of a struck match. "I am an artist." "You smell like a wet garden." The C1 came off his palms in a swarm. 30 birds, 40, streaking down the canyon wall in a spiral. And Sakura got Chiyo behind a rock and Kakashi was already forming signs, and Naruto walked forward into the middle of the swarm with his hands still in his pockets. They hit. All of them. The canyon floor came apart in a chain of blasts that rolled up the walls and blew sand 200 meters into the sky, and Sakura screamed a word that got lost in it. The smoke pulled inward. That's the part that ended Deidara's afternoon before it properly started. Fire is meant to spread. This fire went the other way. It bent, curled, and ran toward one point inside the cloud like water down a drain, and the point was a 16-year-old's open mouth. Naruto walked out of the crater licking his thumb. "Art is a bang," Deidara said, with the specific fury of a man watching somebody use his life's philosophy as a condiment. "Art is a bang, it is a moment. It is, yeah, about that." Naruto worked his jaw like a man with something stuck in a molar. "That's the worst art I ever tasted. It's chalky. Are you not seasoning these?" C3. The thing that came off the bird's back was the size of a house, and it went up 200 meters before it dropped, and Deidara detonated it in the air over the canyon on purpose, because C3 was the technique that had flattened a fortress in the land of Earth, and it had never in its career been asked to consider an alternative. The blast wave came down the canyon like the sea arriving. Fire Dragon's iron fist! Naruto punched it. He met a wall of pressure 50 meters wide, with one flaming fist, and the shockwave folded around him instead of through him. And then he opened up and pulled the entire thing in. The heat, the chakra-laced particulate, the concussive front, all of it funneling down into a boy standing on a rock with his cheeks bulging. He swallowed. He wiped his mouth on his wrist. He looked up. "That one had flavor," he said, and now he was grinning with too many points in it. "Do that again and I'm gonna get fast." Deidara ran. He was honest enough about it afterward, in the last 90 seconds of his life, to admit that it was running. He took the bird up, 300 meters, 500, into the thin cold air where nothing on legs could follow, and he leveled off and started laughing because altitude had never once failed him. Then he heard the sound. Naruto Uzumaki came up off the canyon floor on 2 columns of fire out of the soles of his feet and closed 500 meters in under 4 seconds. And the first thing Deidara knew about it was the smell of scorched clay from below and behind. Fire Dragon's Talon! The kick took the bird's head off and both of them fell. Kakashi Hatake, from the ground, with the Sharingan running, tracked two shapes coming down out of the sky, trading blows the whole way, and made a sound he was glad nobody could hear over the wind. Deidara hit the desert on his back. He got up with his mouth already working the clay and his hands already shaking. And he looked at the boy standing over him with the white scarf whipping in the thermals, and something in his artist's eye finally understood the assignment. "Fine," he whispered. "Fine, You want to eat? Eat this." He took the pill. His body swelled. The chest cavity opened and the light came out of it. And the technique that came next was the one he had built for a single purpose, which was to prove that art could be total. C4, Karura! The cloud that came off him was invisible, and it was made of 1,000,000 microscopic bombs, and it did not care about armor, distance, terrain, or willpower, because it worked from the inside. It expanded in a dome 800 meters wide, and everything living inside that dome was already dead. Kakashi, Sakura, and Chiyo were outside it, because Naruto had thrown all three of them out with a hand and a shout 11 seconds earlier, and Sakura had understood exactly what that meant, and had screamed his name the entire way through the air. Inside the dome, Naruto Uzumaki stood in a cloud of his own destruction and inhaled. He didn't breathe the way people breathe. His chest came open past anything a ribcage should allow, and the air over 800 meters of desert bent inward in visible ribbons, and the invisible cloud of 1,000,000 bombs streamed in from every direction at once and went down his throat in a spiral that hummed. Every particle, every grain of chakra-laced clay. He drank Deidara's masterpiece the way a man finishes a bowl at the bottom of a long day. Then he burped, and a little curl of fire came out. Deidara stood 40 meters away with his chest open and empty and his mouth ajar and no technique left in the world that he had faith in. "That's art?" Naruto shouted at him. "That's your top one? It didn't even taste like anything. It was air. You made art out of air and you skipped the part where it's good. You were gonna kill my friends." The heat came up off Naruto's shoulders, and the sand around him started to turn to glass in a widening ring, and his pupils narrowed into thin vertical lines, and everything funny went out of him at once. "You had Gaara tied to a bird like a sack of rice. He's my friend. You knew you were carrying somebody's whole life, and you made jokes about it for 3 days." Deidara's hands came up. Fire Dragon's roar. The column that came out of him was 11 meters at the base, and it went from Naruto's mouth to Deidara's chest in less time than it took to blink, and it did not stop where he was standing. It carried on down the desert for 400 meters and vitrified a road of glass through the dunes that traders would use as a landmark for the next 60 years. Deidara of Iwa, who had wanted his death to be the loudest thing that ever happened, went out with no sound at all. There was a flash and a shape inside the flash for a fraction of a second, and then the wind moved a little ash sideways. Naruto stood in it. He breathed out. He put a hand on the scarf. "You don't get a bang," he said. Sasori was the opposite of that fight in every way, and it was harder for it, cold where Deidara had been loud, patient where Deidara had been vain, iron sand that formed walls that had to be broken instead of swallowed, poison in every joint of every one of his 110 puppets, and a body that was itself a weapon with a living core in the chest. "Fire burns the poison off him as it lands," Chiyo said, watching from behind a stone with her eyes very wide. "It comes off him as steam, the third Kazakage's own venom, and he's cooking it in the air. Then he only has to worry about the steel," Sakura said, "which means he has to know where the steel is thin." She found it. That's the part the reports got right. Sakura Haruno, 20 minutes into a fight against the man who had killed Akage, called the core locations out loud like an artillery spotter. "Third chamber, left hip, behind the cloth, move." And Naruto burned through everything she pointed at. They broke the iron sand with the flame cage first, 7 rings locking a slab of it stationary in midair so Sakura could hammer it into powder. They broke the third Kazakage puppet with a wing attack that took both its arms off at the shoulder. And when Sasori came out of his own shell with the technique that had emptied a fortress, 100 puppets rising at once, 100 blades, an army in a cavern, Naruto Uzumaki set his feet and did the thing that Jiraiya had spent 9 months teaching him to do, instead of the thing he wanted to do. Fire Dragon's Flame Cage. 40 rings. 90. 110 spinning, locking every puppet in the cavern in place in a forest of burning hoops, none of them touching a single body, so that 110 dead men hung motionless in the air and stopped being weapons. They were people, Naruto said. You made them into stuff. Sakura, don't look at their faces. I'm looking at the core, Sakura said with tears coming down. Left of center. Now. Naruto's arm came back, and the fire on it narrowed down into a lance thinner than a wrist and longer than a room. Sasori of the Red Sand, who had made himself into a thing that could last forever, specifically so that nothing could ever end him, got about half of a sentence out. The lance went through the core. The narration doesn't linger, and neither did he. They gave Gaara his life back in the sand outside the cave, Chiyo's hands on his chest, Sakura's chakra feeding her, the old woman trading what she had left for a boy she had once helped ruin. And when Gaara of the desert opened his eyes and sat up in a ring of 100 Suna shinobi who had come running across the dunes for their Kazekage, the first thing he saw was Naruto sitting on a rock, bleeding from a puppet blade in the thigh. Wave vein. You came, Gaara said. Yeah, well. Naruto shrugged. You're in my guild. Gaara of the desert looked at the sand for a moment. Then he stood up and turned to the 100 shinobi behind him and said something that Suna's records preserve word for word to this day. Bow to him, said the Kazekage. And they did, and Naruto Uzumaki went the color of a sunset and yelled at everybody to stop it, which they didn't, for a full minute. Konoha had 5 months of ordinary life after that, and it is worth saying out loud that they were good months because of what came next. Naruto and Ino worked a joint mission to the Land of Hot Water that involved a corrupt daimyo's ledger and ended with Ino wearing another woman's face for 9 hours, and Naruto standing in a hallway pretending to be a bodyguard, doing an unbelievably poor job of it, and getting them both out by picking up a marble column. They ate dinner on the wall afterward with their legs hanging over the drop. You know what's weird about you, Ino said. Pick one. You're the most frightening thing in this village, and you have to be told when to eat vegetables. Vegetables have a texture problem. They have a you problem. She stole the last piece of egg off his plate, which nobody else alive would have attempted. My dad asked about you. Naruto stopped chewing. Am I in trouble? He said, is that boy going to burn my daughter's house down? That's fair. What'd you say? I said probably, eventually, by accident. Ino leaned back on her hands. And then he laughed for about a minute, and then he stopped laughing and he said, he's the only one I'd want standing in front of her. Naruto looked out over the village. Lamps coming on down the terraces, the river going gold, somebody's dog getting shouted at. I like your dad, he said. He's terrifying, actually. That's why I like him. Then, on a morning in the 6th month, Naruto was 15 kilometers north on a courier run when the sky over Konoha went up in smoke. He stopped in the middle of a road with a scroll in his hand and looked south, and his nose flared once. Paper. Rain. Steel. 6 bodies with one mind in them and iron rods coming out of their faces. He dropped the scroll. He ran, and he ran flat out, and somewhere around the 8-kilometer mark, his feet stopped touching the ground, because Dragon Force at full sprint doesn't leave time for contact with the earth. Farmers in the fields north of the village looked up and saw a line of fire go over the treetops at head height, and the wind of it flattened 2 hectares of barley, and the sound came 4 seconds behind it. He got there in the middle. What he saw when he came over the northern wall stayed in him for the rest of his life. There was no village. There was a crater a kilometer across, and the crater was where the market and the academy and the residential terraces and the hospital annex used to be, and the rubble lay in a radial pattern, all of it thrown outward from one point. Dust hung over the whole bowl in a haze the color of bone. There were people in the rubble. Some of them were moving. Shinobi lay in rows where the wave had caught them. Kakashi Hatake was on his side in a collapsed street with his arm at an angle and half a building on his legs, alive, barely. One hand still up in a sign he had not managed to finish. Shizune was down in the tower ruins. Iruka Umino was dragging a child out of a hole with one arm, because the other one was broken in 2 places. And 40 meters from the edge of the crater, on her back in the wreckage of somebody's roof, was Hinata Hyuga. She had gone at one of them alone. She had done it because somebody had to buy time, and she had bought it. And the price was a rod through her side and a chest that was moving in a way chests should never move. Naruto landed beside her. He got his hand under her head. Hinata, Naruto-kun, blood at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes found him and did something warm even then. You're late. I know. I'm sorry. Don't talk. He put 2 fingers on her throat and found a pulse like a moth in a jar, and then he put his forehead against hers for 1 second, which she never told anybody about because it was hers. You're gonna keep breathing. That's an order from your future Hokage. Sakura, Sakura, over here, right now. Then he stood up. The dust in a 50-meter ring around him lifted off the ground and went to nothing. The broken timbers nearest to him began to smoke. Rainwater in the gutters flashed off in white plumes, and the scarf came up off his shoulders in the draft of his own body, blazing white, the woven scales alight from end to end. The 6 paths of pain stood on the far lip of the crater in a line, and every one of them turned their heads at the same time, and every one of those faces had the same eyes. You hurt my friends, Naruto said. His voice came out very flat, which was the part that made 3 separate Anbu on the ridge go cold. Every one of you is going to burn. The animal path's hands came together, and the summons came out in a rush. The drilling ox, the many-headed dog, the great crested bird, the centipede, all of them at once, a menagerie the size of a district charging down into the bowl. Fire Dragon's wing attack. Both arms swept out, and the fire went with them, and the wings were 60 meters across, and it went through the summons the way a hand goes through a spider's web. The dog split its heads, and the heads burned. The ox came apart at the shoulder and slid to a stop as a shape made of glass and ash. The bird got airborne with the animal path on its back. Naruto went up off the ground on 2 jets from his feet, caught the bird by the leg, spun once, and threw the whole thing down into the crater floor, hard enough to make the standing walls fall over. Then he came down on top of it with both hands. Fire Dragon's crushing fang! The animal path stopped controlling anything. The human path came at him from behind and got a hand on the back of his skull and started to pull, because that path had never once failed to take what was inside a head. Naruto's hand closed around its wrist before the technique finished. The grip went orange, then white. The chakra receiver in the path's forearm, the black rod that carried Nagato's will across 60 kilometers, cooked through, sagged, and dropped out of the arm in 2 dripping pieces. Wrong guy, Naruto said, and hit him once, and the body left the crater and came down in the trees outside the wall. The Preta path stepped in front of him with both palms out, because absorption had answered every technique in the world. Naruto grabbed its head, put his other hand flat on its chest, and burned it from both ends at once. Fire's not chakra, he said into its face, while it tried and tried and tried to drink something that had never been on the menu. Nobody told you, huh? Conan wrote in her own record years later that Nato began to make a sound during that 90 seconds that she had never heard out of him in 20 years. Then the Deva path came down out of the smoke, and the world went still in a way that had nothing to do with silence. Every shinobi in that crater felt it. A pressure building in the chest, a stillness with weight in it, a sense that something enormous had taken a breath and had chosen to hold it. Shikamaru Nara, pinned under a beam 100 meters out, felt the hair on his arm stand up and understood in the space of a heartbeat that this was the thing that had made the crater. Shinra Tensei. The wave went out. It erased a district. It took what was left of the eastern terraces, the storehouses, the water tower, 400 meters of rubble, and flattened all of it into a plain. It caught Naruto Uzumaki square and drove him through 3 collapsed buildings and out the other side, and he skipped once off the ground and hit the base of the northern wall and stopped a stone. There was a pause. The wall crumbled outward, and Naruto came out of it. He came out slow, with his shoulders rolling, blood running down the side of his face from the hairline in a sheet and blood in his teeth, and the scales were already coming up his forearms in gold-red plates, and the grin was already back, and it had nothing pleasant in it at all. Is that everything? He rolled his neck until it cracked twice. Because I've got more. The Devapath's expression moved, which those faces had been built to avoid. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist! He crossed 200 meters in one step, and the punch met a Shinra Tensei head-on, and the shockwave of two absolutes arguing blew every remaining pane of glass out of the northern district and knocked over the emergency triage tents by the river. Then he did the thing that finished it, and it was the nose that did it, and Jiraiya would have wept. 5 seconds, Naruto said, spitting blood. You gotta wait 5 seconds. I can smell the rods reset. You've been doing it the whole fight. He counted out loud, and the crater heard him count. 1, 2. He shifted his weight forward. 3, 4. Fire Dragon's sword horn. Every inch of him ignited, and he went in headfirst inside a cone of fire like a drill launched from a cannon, and he took the Devapath center mass at the exact moment its technique had nothing left in the chamber, and the two of them went out of the crater, over the ruins, into a cliff face 900 meters away. Naruto walked back out of the dust alone. He found the real one 30 minutes later, 6 kilometers out, in a paper tower under a canopy of trees. He came through the wall instead of the door. Nagato of the Uzumaki was in a machine. That was the first thing. A body wasted down to bone and hair, black rods in the spine, legs that hadn't held weight in decades, eyes like a pair of rings sunk into a face that had aged 40 years in 20. Konan stood between them with her paper already coming off her arms. Move, said Naruto. He is the only thing I have, Konan said. I know what that's like. He looked at her, and something in his eyes had gone from gold back to blue, and it stopped her cold. That's why you get to keep standing there. Sit down, lady. I'm gonna talk to him. The conversation in that tower took 18 minutes, and there was no fighting in it. Nagato talked about the rain, and about a boy named Yahiko, and about a village with a hole in it, and the countries that had made the hole, and the way the world worked when you were born small. He said it the way a man reads out a ledger he has checked 1,000 times, and the terrible thing was that most of it was true. You have felt it too. Nagato's voice was a rasp with a fan behind it. I have read your file. They feared you. They crossed the street. And you still stand here and speak about love as though the world has ever given you a reason. The rings in his eyes narrowed. How? After all of it, tell me how you still believe in anything. Naruto stood in a room full of paper with a hole burned through the wall behind him and rain coming in, and thought about it honestly, because the question deserved that. Because the people I love are still breathing, he said. That's enough. The rain filled the pause. Some of them are dead, Nagato said. Today, by my hand. Yeah, Naruto's jaw worked. I know. I counted on the way here, 52 so far. Tucci's alive, but his hands are gone, and he'll never make a bowl again, and he taught me how to hold chopsticks. The heat came up off his shoulders, and the paper on the walls curled away from him in a wave. You want to know what I want to do? I want to open my mouth right now and leave nothing in this tower but the rods. That's what every part of me is telling me to do, all at once, at the same volume. Konan's paper stopped moving. But there's people under my village, Naruto said, and you can put them back. Nagato looked at him for a long time. You would ask that of me. I'm not asking. Naruto crouched down in front of the machine so their eyes were level, and the fire came off his shoulders in sheets, and he let it, and the temperature in that tower went past what a normal man could survive, and Nagato was past normal, and both of them ignored it. I'm telling you what your last thing is going to be. You spent 30 years teaching the world about pain. Fine. Everybody heard you. Now teach it one thing about the other direction, and then be done. And you will let me go? You'll be gone. Naruto stood up. That's different. That's the part I have to live with. Nagato Uzumaki began to laugh, which cost him blood. Jiraiya Sensei's student, he said. Of course. Of course he found you. He formed the sign with hands that had barely moved in a decade. The technique had a name nobody in Konoha had ever heard, and it went out over the ruins in a wave of light that came up through the ground and through the rubble and through 52 people who had stopped, and the light put them back. Ino Yamanaka was on her knees in the wreckage of a collapsed street when it happened. With both hands on a Chunin's chest and no pulse under them for 4 minutes. And she felt the heart start under her palms, and she screamed, and she never once found the words for what that felt like. Nagato's head went back against the frame of his machine, and the light in the rings went out, and Conan caught his hand. Naruto stood in the rain outside the tower for a while and let it hit him, which meant it turned to steam a hand's width from his skin and rose off him in a column that went above the tree line. Letting something end without fire had cost him more than the entire fight had. He would be honest about that later, with exactly one person. Konoha spent 9 days digging. They found everybody. That was the thing they held on to. Every person under the rubble came out, and most of them came out alive, and the ones who hadn't been alive were alive again. And the medical division wrote reports full of language that never worked. Naruto worked the pile for 4 days without sleeping. He lifted beams that took 8 men. He put his hands on stone that was too hot to touch, because he was hotter, and moved it. On the second day, he heard a heartbeat under 9 meters of masonry that 3 sensors had already declared empty, and he went down through it with his bare hands and came up with a 4-year-old and her cat. On the 5th evening, Ino found him sitting on a heap of broken timber at the corner where 2 streets used to meet, holding a piece of a wooden sign in both hands. Half a character was left on it. It had been read once. She sat down beside him. She didn't say anything for a while, because she had figured out somewhere around the age of 13 that silence was sometimes the right answer with him, and it was one of about 11 reasons this worked. The sun went down behind the monument. He was in my guild too. Tochi, Naruto said. Ino reached over and took his hand. His hands ran hot. Everyone knew that. Kids dared each other to touch him. Mednin took his temperature and wrote numbers down that got flagged as errors. She held it anyway, the way she always did, and she didn't flinch, and after a moment his thumb moved once against the back of her hand. He's alive, she said. His hands are ruined. So you'll learn to cook, she shrugged. Badly. Horribly. He'll sit on a stool and yell at you, and it will be the worst broth in the land of fire, and he'll have somewhere to be every day for the rest of his life. Naruto looked at her. That's the best idea anybody's had all week, he said. I have a lot of them. You should ask more often. He did learn. It was bad. Tochi shouted himself hoarse about it for 11 years and lived to 81. The war came 10 months later, and it came for everybody at once. They called it the Fourth Great Ninja War, and they called the other side an army, and both of those were generous. What crossed the borders in the spring was 100,000 white Zetsu, a single organism wearing 100,000 shapes, made of the flesh of a tree and the chakra of a goddess nobody had named in 1,000 years. And behind that, an army of the dead. And behind that, a man in a mask. And behind him, something worse. The allied shinobi forces put 5 Kaji on one field for the first time in history. Gaara gave a speech on the ridge that made 40,000 people from 5 villages stop hating each other for long enough to matter. And the 4th Division commander asked, on the record, where the Leaf's Dragon Slayer was going to be assigned, and Shikamaru Nara, 19 years old, chief tactician, holding a clipboard he had already stopped writing on, gave the answer that ended up in the histories. He isn't a unit, Shikamaru said. He's the front line. We advance behind him. Naruto crossed the sea to the eastern staging ground on a troop transport with 300 shinobi on it. He spent the entire 9-hour crossing hanging over the port rail with the white scarf pulled over his mouth, making a noise like a door being forced open. 300 allied shinobi from 4 different villages, most of whom had heard the stories, filed past him in shifts to look. That's him, said Akumo Jonin. That's the one who ate the C4? They say he ate a hurricane over Konoha. He held still, Naruto shouted at the ocean without turning around. Asuna Jinin brought him a bucket. He thanked her with enormous dignity and then used it. Kiba Inuzuka laughed so hard that Akamaru had to hold him up by the sleeve, and Ino, who was going to the sensory division and had no business being on that deck, sat on a crate beside him for 5 straight hours with a hand flat between his shoulder blades and said absolutely nothing about it, which he noticed, and which he brought up 7 months later once, at the exact right moment, they hit ground at dawn. He was fine in 4 seconds. He was by 6 in the morning on the Western Plain. And then the war found out what a dragon slayer was. 100,000 white Zetsu is a number that means nothing until you see it. It came over the ridge in a mass, and the ground under it went from brown to white, and the Allied line, 20,000 shinobi 3 deep, braced with the specific tightness of people who have done sums and lost. Naruto Uzumaki walked out in front of the line and rolled his sleeves up past the elbow. Naruto. Shikamaru on the command rise with a radio in his hand. Formations holding at 400 meters, do not. They're made of chakra, Naruto called back. Yes? So they're food. Scales came up his arms in a wave from wrist to shoulder. His eyes went gold, no white left, pupils gone to slits. Tell everybody to advance into the smoke. Wherever I've been, it's clear. Dragon Force. He hit the mass. The Allied shinobi forces standing on that ridge at 6:40 in the morning saw a single point of gold light go into 100,000 bodies and come out the other side 4 minutes later, and everything in the line between those 2 points was ash and glass. He did not use one technique. He used all of them, and he used them like a man walking through a field with a scythe. Wing attack down the flanks, 60 meters aside. Iron fist through the center in a line that fused the ground into a road behind him. Roar into the third wave, which vitrified 200 bodies mid-charge and left a standing sculpture garden of them that the 3rd Division walked through in silence 40 minutes later. When they piled onto him 30 at a time, he lit himself up as a standing aura and let them come, and they came apart on contact, and they never stopped coming, and he never once slowed. He fought for 6 hours. He got hungrier as he went. He's Akiri Chunin on the radio, breathing hard. Command, I need to report. The enemy attacks aren't landing. There's a fire jutsu unit in the Zetsu ranks. The Leaf Shinobi is standing in it. He's standing in it and it's going into his mouth and he's getting faster. Copy, said Shikamaru. Advance behind him. By noon, there was a kilometer-wide corridor of glass through the enemy center, with the Allied army moving up it in column, and the Zetsu on either side of that corridor would not go near it. Then Kabuto's real army came up out of the ground, the reanimated dead. Legends of 4 eras with black cracks in their faces and no fear left in them, because fear is for people with something to lose. The 2nd Mizukage, the 3rd Raikage, Mu of the Hidden Stone. Names that the older shinobi in the line said out loud like a diagnosis. They did not know his reputation. That's the part worth saying. Every one of them died before the hidden villages had heard of him, and they came at Naruto Uzumaki as an unknown quantity with a loud mouth. The 3rd Raikage, who had once held off 10,000 men alone, and whose skin had never been cut by anything, got Naruto through the shoulder with a spear hand, went in above the collarbone and out the back, and the whole ridge saw it happen and made a sound. Naruto looked down at the arm inside his own body. Then he grabbed it with both hands and held on and turned his entire output up in one shove. And the world's most indestructible skin discovered heat that had no ceiling to it, and the 3rd Raikage of Kumogakure was ash to the shoulder before he could pull back. Fire Dragon's brilliant flame. Both hands over his head, clapped together, brought down two-fisted, and the greatest single obstacle in the history of the Land of Lightning stopped being an obstacle in a flash of light that 4 divisions saw from 3 kilometers away. Mu went invisible. Naruto's nose found the heat displacement, and he threw a flame cage into empty air, and the empty air screamed, and then he closed the rings. Gaara watched all of it from the command post on the high ground, with his arms folded and his face doing nothing, which was normal, and with his sand hanging still in the air around him, which was not. Tamari, beside him, watched her brother watch. He covered a kilometer in under 3 minutes, she said. Yes. That's 4 reanimated Kage in one afternoon. Yes. Gaara. She turned her head. Are you all right? The Kazekage of the Hidden Sand stood on a rise above the largest battle in recorded history and allowed something into his chest that he had never had room for at any point in his life, which was ease. There was a night, Gaara said, when I was 12, in a field of glass, and somebody put a hand on my head. He didn't say anything else. Tamari didn't ask him to, but the war did not go one way. And it is important to say what it cost, because the fire that came later came from somewhere. Choji Akimichi took a bone spear through the thigh, holding a gap open for the medical corps, and would walk with a hitch for the rest of his life. Rock Lee broke his left arm in 2 places and kept fighting with the right, sobbing about youth, refusing 4 separate orders to fall back. Kakashi Hatake burned his Sharingan down to smoke and near blindness, holding a dimensional gap closed for 11 seconds. Kiba lost the tip of an ear. Shino lost most of a colony and grieved it like family, because it was. And on the 3rd day, in the sensory tent 40 kilometers behind the line, the Zetsu got in. They came up through the floor, because the floor of a tent is dirt, and dirt was theirs. Inoichi Yamanaka got 14 of his people out and took a blade meant for his daughter across the back and stomach. And the report that reached Naruto on the Eastern Front said critical, and 1 word after it, which was holding. Naruto did not run. That was the thing that scared people. He walked to the end of the ridge, and he stood there for a moment, and then he turned around. And every shinobi within 80 meters stepped back from the heat of him without deciding to. He reached the sensory camp in 19 minutes across 40 kilometers. There were 12 Zetsu left in the tent. They were ash before Ino finished turning around. She was on her knees with both hands inside her father's back, and her arms red to the elbow, and her hair stuck to her face. And Sakura was working the front of him, and there were 4 medics on the ground beside them, doing what they could. Naruto knelt down on the other side. "Tell me where to put my hands," he said. "He's bleeding out through the..." Ino's voice broke and she hauled it back by force. "There's a vessel, the splenic artery. I can't get pressure and clamp at the same time. Show me." "You'll cook him." "Ino." He held both hands up in front of her, and the heat coming off them dropped and kept dropping until she could feel the change on her face. 9 months of learning to burn a hole through 1 leaf at 40 meters, and this was what it had been for. "Show me." She showed him. He put 2 fingers where she said, and he held them there, exactly there, for 51 minutes without moving a millimeter, while Sakura Haruno rebuilt her mentor's father from the inside out. Inoichi Yamanaka woke up 2 days later and asked for his daughter. Naruto was asleep sitting up against the tent pole with his head back, having refused to leave, and Ino was asleep against his shoulder. And Inoichi looked at the 2 of them for a while with an expression that his wife would have recognized. "Well," he said to the ceiling. "All right then." Kabuto Yakushi had spent 8 months in a cavern under a mountain believing that stone was a form of protection. He had 500 coffins down there. He had the entire history of shinobi warfare filed in rows in the cold and the smell of old paper and preservative. And he had a body he had rebuilt out of 11 other people. And he had a plan with no gaps in it. The nearest entrance was 9 kilometers of switchback tunnel behind 11 seals. Fire doesn't need a path, it makes one. The heat came down the tunnel first, a wave of it, out ahead of anything visible, and the rock in the passage went from black to gray to a dull orange in the space of 90 seconds, and the seals on the doors burned off their own paper before they could activate. Kabuto looked up from his desk. "Fire dragons roar!" The wall came in. Not the door, the wall, 40 tons of it. And the column of flame that came through the hole was 11 meters at the base in a room that was 8 meters tall. So it went along the ceiling in a rolling sheet and took the entire eastern half of the laboratory with it. The coffins came apart. Not all at once, one after another, all down the rows, the wood going, the seals going, the black rods inside them softening and dropping. And the souls went free. That's what the 2 Suna scouts who followed him in reported, and neither of them ever changed the story. Light came up out of the broken containers in single bursts, 1, then another, then a dozen at once, then hundreds, going up through the burning ceiling and out into the sky, like lanterns being lit along a road that ran the whole length of the mountain. Somewhere in the tunnels, 100 generations of the war dead stopped being furniture. Kabuto ran. He ran into tunnels that had already become ovens, with snake modifications sliding out of his sleeves and his back, and behind him the walls were glowing orange, and behind that came the sound of boots. He turned and fought in the gallery 3 kilometers down because there was nowhere left. He was fast. He had 11 bloodlines in him. He got a blade into Naruto's ribs and a scale-plated tail around his throat, and he got a serpent's jaw around the boy's forearm and bit down to the bone, and Naruto let him do it and then closed his hand, scales against scales, in an oven in the middle of a mountain. You, Kabuto managed with his eyes going wide behind the frames, aren't in the reports. There's nothing in the... You raised my friends out of their graves. Naruto's voice came out with 2 tones in it. You raised the old man's students. You dug up the third Hokage's whole life and pointed it at his village. My guild is under this mountain in boxes. Wait, I don't hold back. Not ever. Not for anyone. Kabuto Yakushi made a choice at that point. He chose to reach for a technique. He got about a third of the way through it, and then the gallery filled with light. And afterward there was nothing on the floor of that chamber but a pair of frames with the lenses run into little bright pools. The Edo Tensei ended when he did. 10,000 reanimated shinobi on 4 fronts came apart mid-swing, and the Allied forces surged forward across the whole line, and for about 6 hours it looked like the war was going to be won by people. Then Madara Uchiha stood up out of the ground, and everybody found out what the word war had been holding back. He came up out of the dirt in the middle of the Eastern Front with his hair down to his knees and a gun bay on his back, and the calm of a man arriving at a business meeting he had scheduled 100 years earlier. 20,000 shinobi were standing on that field. He looked at them the way you look at weather on the way to a door. Ah, Madara said, there are more of you than I expected. The 4th Division fired first, 800 jutsu, coordinated, everything from earth walls to lightning lances, an opening barrage that had been designed by Shikamaru Nara to kill a tailed beast. Madara raised one hand. He killed 900 people in 4 minutes. There is no better way to write it. He walked into the Allied center, and the perfect Susanoo came up around him. 100 meters of purple-black armor with 4 arms and a face like a helmet with no mercy in the eye slots. And it took a step, and a battalion went under the foot. The blades came down in sweeps a kilometer long. The 5th Division stopped existing as a unit and became a casualty list. The Kaji themselves engaged him, all 5 at once, and he beat all 5 of them and left them alive because leaving them alive made a point. You cannot be serious, he said to Onoki, who was in a crater. This is the world you built out of my absence? Children with headbands and a treaty? By nightfall, he had the 10 tails inside him. By midnight, he had both Rinnegan. By 2 in the morning, the Eastern Front was 30,000 people trying to hold a line that had stopped existing. And Shikamaru Nara was on the radio, saying the same word over and over into the static. And the word was regroup, and there was nowhere to regroup to. Naruto Uzumaki came over the rise at 2:14 in the morning with ash on him and the scarf blazing. He looked at the field. He looked at the Susanoo standing over it. He looked at Hinata Hyuga being carried past him on a stretcher, with her right arm in a splint from wrist to shoulder, and Lee going by with one arm dead at his side and tears cutting tracks in the soot on his face, and Kakashi sitting on the ground with a hand over his ruined eye. He walked past all of them, out onto the plain, alone. Hey! The Susanoo's head came around. 100 meters up, the man inside it turned his own head, deep in the chest of the thing, and looked down. Come down here! Naruto said. Madara Uchiha came down. He stepped out of his own armor and landed on the dirt 40 meters away with the gun by across his back and the 10-tailed chakra rolling off him in black gold sheets that pushed the smoke away in a circle 200 meters wide. You're the vessel, he said. The 9 tails. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. He rolled a shoulder. I'm a dragon slayer, and you killed 900 of my people tonight. 941. Madara's mouth moved. I keep count. It seems only right. Scales came up Naruto's arms. Dragon Force at 19 was different from Dragon Force at 13, the way a forge is different from a candle. It came on smooth and immediate. No strain in it. Plates of gold red running up both forearms and over the shoulders and along the jaw. Hair standing straight up in the thermal draft. Eyes going full gold with the pupils gone to hairlines. The dirt under his sandals turned to glass in a ring 6 meters across. 30,000 shinobi on that ridge, most of them dying, all of them watching. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. He crossed 40 meters without a run-up and hit Madara Uchiha in the center of the chest with everything he had. The Susanoo came up between them at the last instant. One rib of it, a single plate of purple-black chakra the size of a house. The punch landed. The plate held. It cracked. It rang like a struck bell across the entire battlefield, and it went white hot at the point of impact, and it bowed inward 11 centimeters, and it held. Naruto Uzumaki stood there with his fist against the armor and his feet in a crater and processed, for the first time in his entire life, the sensation of hitting something with full dragon force and having it still be there afterward. The ridge went absolutely still. Sakura Haruno put a hand over her mouth. Gaara took one step forward. Naruto's face did something nobody expected. He grinned. He grinned like a boy on his birthday, wide and awful and lit up from inside, because he was 19 years old, and he had never once in his life needed to fight and think at the same time. And here at last was a reason to. Interesting, Madara said, and the terrible part was that he meant it. The next 40 minutes tore up 9 square kilometers. Madara pushed him back with a sweep of the Susanoo's blade that cut a trench 400 meters long and 30 deep, and Naru came out of the trench and up the blade at a sprint and put a crushing fang through the wrist joint of the armor. Madara took the Susanoo apart and rebuilt it around him twice. Naruto ate 2 great fire annihilations and used the fuel to put a roar through the shoulder plate. Naruto bled. That has to be in the record too. Madara's gunbai caught him across the face and broke his cheekbone and put his left eye out of commission for 11 minutes. A truth-seeking sphere took a piece out of his left side the size of a fist and did it in a way that couldn't be burned closed. A wood-style spike went through his thigh and pinned him to the ground for 3 seconds, and he tore his own leg free rather than spend a fourth. He kept getting up, every time. That was the thing that started to change the shape of Madara's face. "You do understand," Madara said from inside 100 meters of armor, "that you are alone. Your allies are behind that ridge dying of the wounds I gave them casually. There is nothing in this world that stands between me and the end of it, and you have already used everything you have." "Nope." Naruto spat a tooth into the dirt. It grew back in 90 seconds because his mouth had always been strange. "Not even close. Then I will be thorough." Madara Uchiha raised both hands over his head, and something happened to the sky. 2 shadows came across the battlefield. They came from the east, and they came slowly. And 30,000 people looked up at the same moment. Meteors. 2 of them. Actual mountains, torn out of the upper air and dropped, each one large enough to leave a lake where the eastern front used to be, coming down with a sound that arrived before they did. A low grinding howl, the noise of atmosphere being pushed out of the way of something that had no business inside it. "Chibaku, everyone run!" Shikamaru screamed into the radio. "All divisions due west, run!" Naruto Uzumaki looked up at the first mountain, and then he looked back at the ridge, at 11,000 wounded people who couldn't run anywhere. He put both hands down at his sides, palms toward the ground, and went up. 2 columns of fire came out of his feet and blew a crater in the plain, and he went off the ground like a round leaving a barrel, straight up, trailing a double stripe of flame 600 meters long, and 30,000 shinobi turned their heads and tracked him with their mouths open. He met the first meteor, 8 kilometers up. He hit it once. "Fire Dragon King's Demolition Fist!" The mountain cracked, a single line, all the way across the face of it, glowing at the edges. He drew back and hit it again, and the crack forked into 11, and the fracture lines spread out across the surface in a web wide enough to see from the ground. He screamed something with no words in it and hit it a 3rd time. The meteor came apart in the upper atmosphere. It broke into 6 pieces, and then 60, and then thousands, and every piece caught fire on the way down. And what fell on the eastern front for the next 2 minutes was a sky full of burning rock, a curtain of it, from horizon to horizon, gold and orange and screaming. And Naruto Uzumaki hung in the middle of it and opened his mouth and inhaled every particle of the fire as it went past him. The second meteor came down 4 kilometers north of the ridge and made a crater 600 meters across and threw a ring of dirt into the sky, and everybody lived. and Naruto Uzumaki came down out of the fire rain into the middle of that new crater and landed on both feet in molten rock, chest heaving, scales from jaw to ankle, blood at the corner of his mouth, scarf whipping straight out behind him in the updraft of a fresh crater, white, unmarked, blazing at both ends, completely and totally alive. "Good!" he roared up at the sky. "Keep going!" On the ridge, Rock Lee went down on his knees with his one working hand over his mouth. Kiba Inuzuka said, "He punched a mountain to nobody 3 times." Gaara of the desert stood at the high ground with his sand hanging motionless in the air and did not blink for 11 seconds, and Temari, beside him, saw her brother's face do the thing it almost never did. Sakura Haruno, standing on a broken wall with her fists closed, started to laugh and then couldn't stop. Madara Uchiha stood on the plain and looked at the crater for a long moment. "You broke it," he said. "Yeah. With your hands. 3 times. Naruto climbed up out of the melt. The first one's for the wind up. That's a tip, free of charge. And Madara Uchiha, who had planned across 4 generations and treated a world war as an item on a list, did something he had promised himself he would never need to do, which was to end the fight early. He looked up at the moon, and his eyes changed. Infinite Tsukuyomi. The light came down. It came down over the whole world at once. The moon went red, and the red got in everywhere, and the branches of the God tree came out of the earth in every country on the map, and the light found chakra networks the way water finds a crack. Alliance shinobi fell in rows. Whole divisions went down mid-stride, standing, sitting, running, caught in place. Sasuke Uchiha shouted something about his Rinnegan and got half of it out before the light closed over him. Sakura went down with her hand out. Kakashi went down sitting. Gaara went down on the ridge with his sand collapsing around him in a slow slump. 40 kilometers behind the line, in a tent, Ino Yamanaka's mind was in the sensory net, linking 11,000 people, and she felt every single one of them go out at the same moment, like lamps in a hallway, and the last thing she did before the light reached her was scream one name into the net so that whoever was left would know where to look. The red light rolled across the plain and wrapped around Naruto Uzumaki, and it slid off him. It came in through the eyes, the way it was built to, and it went hunting for a chakra network to hook into, and what it found instead was a furnace. Naruto's power had never run in pathways. It had never threaded through Tenketsu, which was why he'd failed a clone jutsu 4 times, and why Neji Hyuga's 64 palms had shut every gate in his body and changed nothing at all. The genjutsu of a goddess reached into him for a network to grip and closed its hand on fire. Naruto opened his mouth and inhaled the edge of the infinite Tsukuyomi off his own face, and it went down his throat in a spiral and came apart with a hiss, and he coughed once and a curl of red smoke came out of his nose. "Tastes like copper," he said. Then he looked around at a battlefield where 30,000 people were lying down under a red sky, and something in him went past anything Madara Uchiha had ever measured. Madara turned around. For the first time in 101 years, his face was doing something he had no plan for. The one variable. The one person on the entire board who had never once been on the board. "That is impossible," he said. "Every living thing with chakra, you put them to sleep." Naruto's voice went out across the empty plain like a bell hit one time, and it carried for 6 kilometers, and shinobi in 3 countries would later swear they heard it in their dreams. "You put my friends to sleep so you could play God with them." The fire came off him in rolling sheets. It went out from him along the ground in every direction and set 9 square kilometers of grass alight at once. "Wake them up." Madara's answer was limbo. 4 of them came out of him. Shadows in a dimension 1 step sideways from the world, invisible to the Byakugan, invisible to sensors, invisible to the Sharingan itself unless you owned that particular pair of eyes. They had killed men who never knew they were in a fight. Madara had used them to end a Kage in front of 4 other Kage, and none of the 4 had understood what happened. Naruto's nose went up, because a body moving through air displaces heat, and heat is the one thing in this world that had never once lied to him. He caught the first limbo clone by the throat mid-step, and the shadow found out that it was capable of burning. He turned into the second one before it landed and put a fist through its chest and out its back. The third came in at his blind side, and he dropped, pivoted on one hand, and took its legs off at the knee with a wing attack that scorched 100-meter stripe of the burning plane black. The fourth one he ate. "Your ghosts smell like you," he said, straightening up. "You should have had somebody else make them." Madara Uchiha stood alone in the middle of 9 square kilometers of fire with the world asleep behind him. Naruto planted his feet. He put his hands out to his sides, and he closed his eyes, and he began to breathe in. He breathed in the air. He breathed in the burning grass and the burning rock, and the heat coming off the second meteor's crater 4 kilometers north. He breathed in the residual glow at the edges of the sky where the infinite Tsukuyomi was still pouring down out of a red moon. He breathed in the fire inside his own body, 16 years of it, everything a dragon had left in the chest of an infant on the 7th day of July. He breathed in the black gold chakra running through the ground under Madara's feet. The plane went from bright to dim. The fire on 9 kilometers of grass bent inward toward one point and went out. The air over the battlefield began to move in one direction only, and it moved fast enough to pull the ash up off the ground in spirals. Madara Uchiha, 101 years old, looked at what was standing in front of him, and finally, at the very end, understood that he had missed something. "Wait," he said. Naruto opened his eyes, and they were gold with no pupil left, just light. He had found this technique on a coastline at 17, in a moment of fury he had never fully described to anyone, and he had refused to give it a name for 2 years because a name makes a thing real, and he had wanted to be sure he would only ever need it once. "Dragon Slayer's secret art," he said. The plane went white. Fire Dragon King's roar. It was not fire the way fire had ever been in this story. What came out of Naruto Uzumaki went in every direction at once, a wave of heat with the whole of him behind it, and it moved outward across the battlefield at a speed the eye had no answer for. 2 kilometers in every direction. Then 3. The Susanoo went to ash before it finished forming. Madara Uchiha was picked up off the ground and carried. The god tree's branches on that plane crisped and curled and fell as flakes. The second meteor's crater filled with molten rock, and every ridge within 4 kilometers turned to glass, and the red light coming down out of the sky met something coming up out of the ground and could not hold together in it. The infinite Tsukuyomi broke. It broke the way fog breaks in direct sun, from the bottom up, the beams of it coming apart and curling away, and the red went out of the moon, and the moon was a moon again. 30,000 shinobi across 9 square kilometers of burning plain opened their eyes at the same moment, with the sound of that roar still ringing in the air over them. And every one of them sat up in the ash, and every one of them was looking in the same direction. Sasuke Uchiha came awake face down on a rock with his Rinnegan already spinning and understood, before he had gotten his knees under him, exactly what had happened and who had done it. And the expression that went across his face in the half second before he stood up was pride so naked he would have burned the memory if he could. Kakashi Hatake sat up with one working eye and looked at the glass and started laughing into his own hands. 40 kilometers back, Ino Yamanaka came out of the net, gasping with 11,000 minds reconnecting around hers. And she pressed both palms against her eyes and said one word out loud in an empty tent. And it was his name. Madara Uchiha was on his knees 300 meters from where he had been standing. His armor was ash. His hair was burned to the shoulder. The 10-tailed chakra was gone out of him, burned out, spent, run to the bottom of the well and past it, and the Rinnegan in his eyes had gone from purple to gray. He was breathing. He was still Madara Uchiha. And when Naruto walked across the glass toward him, he raised his head and looked at him with those eyes, and there was nothing broken in the look. "You are." Madara stopped. "I know what I am," Naruto said. Madara Uchiha coughed. Blood went down his chin. He looked past the boy in the scarf at 30,000 people standing up out of the ash on a burning plain, all of them awake, all of them shouting to each other, one voice finding another and another across 9 kilometers of ruin. "I built a world where nobody would ever have to lose anything again," he said. "I would have given them peace. I had 100 years to be certain of it. You had 100 years and you never once asked anybody. No. Madara's mouth moved, and what came out of it was something close to a laugh, and it broke on the way. I did not think it mattered who held the fire, so long as it was held. His head came up, and the gray eyes found Naruto's gold ones. I see that I was wrong about that. One thing. Only the one. That's more than most guys get to. And then finish it, boy. Madara Uchiha planted one hand on the glass and shoved himself upright because he would take it standing. And tell me what you think the strongest thing in this world is, since you seem to believe you know. Naruto Uzumaki drew his fist back, and the fire came up his arm in a spiral, and the light of it lit 4 kilometers of ruined plain gold. The strongest thing in this world is someone who refuses to stop, he said. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist! There was nothing else in it. No speech, no flourish, no second try. Full dragon force, full output, one punch, and it landed in the center of Madara Uchiha's chest, and the shockwave went out across the glass in a flat white ring that knocked every standing shinobi in a kilometer back onto their heels. Madara burned. He went in one flash from the chest outward, and there was a shape in the light for a fraction of a second with its chin up. And then the wind came across the plain and moved a little ash sideways, and the man who had planned across 4 generations was finished in the middle of his own war by a boy who had failed a clone jutsu 4 times. 30,000 people made a sound that was heard in 2 countries. And then the ash on the ground began to move the wrong way. It came together. It pulled inward across 100 meters of glass and gathered and rose, and something black came out of the middle of it with a mouth in it. And it was screeching, one word over and over. Mother. Black Zetsu, the will that had ridden Madara's spine for 100 years, the thing that had written the tablet, the thing that had been steering every Uchiha in history toward this exact minute, took what was left of the Ten Tails chakra and Madara's ruined body and pulled it all together in a column, and the column stood up, and it kept standing up. The temperature on that battlefield dropped 11 degrees in 4 seconds. She came out of it, white hair to the ground, horns, a 3rd eye in her forehead with rings in it, and 9 marks around the pupil, and 2 more eyes in her palms, and skin like something that had never once been outdoors. She stood on the glass in a robe that moved without wind, and she looked at the burning plain and the 30,000 shinobi with an expression that had no interest in it at all. The oldest shinobi on that field, men who had fought in 3 wars, went down on their knees because their legs simply chose to. Ah, said Kaguya Otsutsuki, you have all multiplied. Her voice went into everyone at once. Nobody heard it with their ears. You are made of my chakra, every one of you. It was never yours, and I have come to collect it. She lifted one hand, and the sky came apart. 30,000 people vanished. She reached out with one gesture and put the entire allied shinobi forces into cocoons on the branches of a tree that grew up out of the plain in 4 seconds and stood 1,100 meters, and the whole army went into the white in silence, and the field was empty. Almost. 3 shapes stood in the glass at the base of the god tree, because Sasuke Uchiha had put a Rinnegan barrier over the 3 of them at the exact instant he understood what was happening and had nearly torn his own eye apart doing it. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, Team 7, on an empty plain under a tree with the world in it. Right. Sakura wiped blood off her mouth. Her hands were shaking and her voice was steady, and both of those things were true at once. What is that? That's the one, Naruto said. That's the one everything else was working for. Kaguya turned her head and looked down at the 3 of them, and it was the first time all night that anything in her face moved. You are awake, she said, the one with the fire. My son's chakra is in the other 2. But you? The rings in her 3rd eye narrowed. You have something else in you, something old. It has a taste I have not encountered since before the tree. Naruto reached up and closed his hand around the white scarf, one time, the way he always did. Scales came up his arms. You think a god can beat a dragon? He said. Let's find out. She took them out of the world. That's the only honest way to write it. Kaguya Otsutsuki did not fight the way shinobi fight, and she did not fight the way Madara had fought, because Madara had at least been standing on the same ground as his enemy. She opened her hand and the plane folded, and Team 7 fell 40 meters into a place that was made of nothing but heat. The lava dimension. An ocean of it, from edge to edge, no shore, a sky the color of a wound, and 3 shinobi dropping into it from height. Sasuke caught Sakura in midair with a chakra chain and swung her onto a floating crust of stone. Naruto hit the surface of the lava like a stone skipping and went under, and Sakura screamed, and Kaguya watched from above with the expression of somebody watching a kettle. The ocean began to move. It moved toward one point. Every ribbon of molten rock in a dimension bent, curled, and streamed toward a hole in the surface where a boy had gone under, and the level of it dropped a meter, and then 5, and then the whole thing was pouring in like water down a drain. Naruto Uzumaki came up out of a dry basin 50 meters below, standing on black rock, with the last of it going down his throat in a ribbon he had to chase with his tongue. He wiped his mouth. His whole body was glowing from the inside like a stove with the door open. "That's the good stuff!" he yelled up at her. "You got any more of that?" Kaguya's third eye blinked. The ice dimension was harder, and it was harder in a way that cost him. She dropped them into it without a word. A world of pale gray walls and black sky, a place with no air movement and no sound, and a temperature that had never once been measured, because nothing that could measure it had ever lasted. Fire and absolute cold are the two things that genuinely have an argument, and Naruto Uzumaki found out inside 11 seconds that he had walked into the one environment built to answer him. His flame went out. It went out for the first time since he was 7 years old, snuffed at the edges, drawing back into his chest as his own body fought to hold its core, and the frost climbed his forearms over the scales and his eyelashes locked together, and Sakura's lips went blue in 9 seconds flat. Naruto. Sasuke on one knee, Susanoo already forming and already frosting over. "It's taking the heat faster than you can. Then I'll go faster." He set his feet on ice that had never melted. Dragon Force at maximum has no upper limit. Because the thing about a furnace is that the fuel is the ceiling, and he had just drunk an ocean of lava. He turned it all up at once, standing still. And the scales came up his neck and over his cheekbones and down to his ankles, and the light came out of him through the plates of them in lines. The wall in front of him ran. The wall behind him ran. The floor went to slush and then to water, and then the water went to steam. And the steam filled a pocket dimension the size of a country, and the temperature in a place that had held absolute cold since before there were words for it went up and did not stop going up. The dimension ran out of cold. That is what happened. There is no better way to put it. The ice walls came down in rivers and the black sky above filled with white, and the whole place ended up smelling like steam and hot scale. And Kaguya Otsutsuki turned in the middle of her own creation and had to move, physically move, out of the path of a wave of melt. Sakura Haruno stood in ankle-deep water in a place where 3 seconds of exposure was fatal, alive, with her hand on the shoulder of the reason. Sakura. Naruto's teeth were chattering and his arms were smoking. "Am I bleeding out my ears?" "Yes." "Cool, fix it later." The acid dimension was the worst of the 3, and it was the one that turned the fight. She put them in it without warning, and there was no floor at all. Nothing but a sea of it under a green sky, and the vapor over the surface stripped skin at 4 breaths. Naruto took the worst of it, because he put himself between it and the other 2 on the way down, and he stayed there. It got into the wound in his side. It got up his left arm and across his back. Sakura, working with both hands and everything Tsunade had ever taught her, while Sasuke held a platform of Susanoo bone above the surface, said afterward that she had never seen a body do what his did, because every burn it put on him he converted, and every bit of damage that went in came back out as heat, and by the time they climbed out of that dimension, he was hitting harder than he had gone in. "Every dimension she picks," Sasuke said, breathing hard, "makes him worse." "Then she should stop picking," Sakura said. Kaguya, on a floating slab above them, put her palms out, the eyes in them opened. "Enough!" She came at them herself, and the next 90 seconds nearly ended everything, all killing ash bones. She fired them out of her forearm in a spray, and the truth of that technique is that a scratch is fatal. And Naruto learned that when one went through the outside of his right thigh, and the flesh around the hole started to turn to powder in front of him. He burned the whole leg from the inside out to stop the spread and kept moving on it, and screamed once and never mentioned it again. Expansive, truth-seeking balls. She made 9 of them into one and dropped a sphere of black nothing the size of a hill on top of the 3 of them, and Sasuke's Susanoo caught it. And the arm of the Susanoo went to nothing at the wrist, and Sasuke coughed blood into his own hand. And she absorbed chakra. Any technique with chakra in it went into her palms and out of existence, which meant Sasuke's entire arsenal cost him twice for half effect, none of which had anything to do with fire. Fire Dragon's roar. The column hit her in the chest and drove her backward across 200 meters of her own dimension, and left a burn on her that had never appeared on that skin in 10,000 years. And Kaguya Otsutsuki looked down at her own sternum with an expression that would have been fear on anybody else. "It does not absorb," she said. "It is not chakra." "Told you." Naruto spat something onto the ground that hissed. "You want it, you gotta eat it, and you can't." She opened a dimensional gate under his feet, and in the half-second of chaos as the world turned over, with the scarf loose and flying straight out behind him in the thermal draft, Kaguya's hand came through the space where it hung. Her fingers closed on the white woven scales. She stopped moving. Everything stopped. The gate hung open and unfinished. The 3 shinobi hung in the fold between 2 places, and Kaguya Otsutsuki, mother of chakra, the thing the sage of the 6 paths had built a world to hold, stood in the middle of her own technique with a length of white cloth between 2 fingers and did not move at all. Her eyes changed. Something crossed them. Enormous, old, useless to her, and real anyway. Something that predated every choice she had ever made. Her thumb moved over the weave, over the pattern of the scales, one at a time, the way you count something you had hoped had ended. "This pattern," she said. Her voice was strange for the first time since she had come out of the ash. "Where did you get?" "Someone gave it to me," Naruto said. 3 seconds. That is all it was. 3 seconds of the 2 of them looking at each other in the fold between worlds, a boy with scales on his jaw and a woman with a 3rd eye. And in those 3 seconds, she understood what she was holding. The fire in that scarf did not trace back to her chakra. It ran the other way. It went back past the god tree, past the fruit, past every plan she had ever set in motion, to the thing that had been burning in this world before she arrived to farm it. She had felt it once, from a long way off, in the age before she made her choices, and she had decided then that she would simply outlast it. It was tied around a child's throat, and the child was on fire, and it had come to find her. "A dragon," Kaguya said. Naruto took the scarf out of her hand. Knowing does not mean forgiving. Whatever she had been to Dragneel across the ages, whatever that look in her eyes meant, she had still reached out one time and put 30,000 people in a tree. She had still tried to take the whole world's ability to choose and file it as an asset. She was still standing in front of everything he had been walking towards since he was 7 years old in a glass crater in a burning forest. "I'm not here to win," Naruto said. "I'm here to end it." Dragon Force came all the way up. There'd been Dragon Force at the Valley of the End when the waterfall stopped arriving and the river went dry. Comparing that to what came up out of him in the fold between dimensions is like comparing a bonfire to a star, and every person who would later try to describe it fell back on that. The scales went full. Jaw to ankle, gold red, every plate lit from underneath. His hair stood straight up and burned at the tips. His eyes went to pure gold with nothing in them but light. No pupil, no white. The scarf came up off his shoulders and the woven scales of it caught. Igneel's own fire, 16 years carried through every explosion, every fireball, every bomb, every boat, running back up the weave from end to end and blazing white. And the temperature stopped being a temperature and became a condition of the place. "Sasuke!" he shouted. 10 seconds! You'll get them. What happened over the next 4 minutes is the reason Team 7 has its own chapter in every shinobi textbook printed since. Sakura Haruno held the center. She stood on a spar of Susanoo bone in the middle of an unfinished dimension with 2 dying men to keep alive, and she kept them alive. Hands on Sasuke's ribs when the truth-seeking sphere took the arm, hands on Naruto's ruined leg between passes, screaming instructions at both of them like a field officer. Hitting a truth-seeking ball out of the air with a chakra-enhanced fist at one point, because there was nothing else available and she was furious. Sasuke Uchiha sealed her movements. That is the flat description of the single hardest thing anybody did in that war. Rinnegan pins thrown across dimensions, locking Kaguya Otsutsuki in one place for 10 seconds at a stretch, and every window cost him. Blood out of the left eye, then the nose, then both ears, his Susanoo down to a shell, his knees gone, and he opened the next window anyway, and the next, and Naruto Uzumaki used all of them. Fire Dragon's wing attack. 2 rivers, 90 meters each, and Kaguya's arm came up and the burn went to the bone of it and stayed. Fire Dragon's crushing fang. It came down through her collarbone and put her through the floor of her own dimension and into the next one down. Fire Dragon's flame cage. Not to contain her. Nothing was going to contain her, but to hold one gate shut for 4 seconds while Sasuke moved Sakura, and the rings held, and Kaguya put her hand through them, and the hand came out cooked. Crimson Lotus, exploding flame blade. Both arms winding into one spinning column, driven down two-handed into her chest, and the dimension they were standing in cracked from the impact. Actual fractures running out through the fabric of the place like a windshield taking a stone. She fought back, and she hurt him, an ash bone through the shoulder. The truth-seeking sphere across his back, which took a strip of him away that Sakura would spend 11 months rebuilding. A blow from her open palm that broke 4 ribs and put him through 2-dimensional walls and out into the middle of a desert with 2 moons, and he came back through the gate on his own, running, with his arm hanging wrong. He kept getting up. He always did. That was the entire technique. And in the last 10 seconds, in the original battlefield, with the God Tree standing 1,100 meters over an empty plain and the whole world asleep in its branches, Sasuke Uchiha put his last pin in and locked her in place under the tree she had grown, and coughed and said one word. Now! Naruto Uzumaki planted his feet on the glass. He breathed in. He breathed in the air over 9 square kilometers of ruined plain. He breathed in the last of the burning grass, and the heat still coming off the second meteor's crater. He breathed in the residual glow at the edges of the sky. He breathed in his own body. All of it, every scrap of fire in him. The fireball he swallowed at 12 in a training ground. The hurricane he drank over the rooftops at 13. The ocean of lava. The venom, the clay, the black lightning. 16 years of eating everything the world had thrown at him and turning it into more of himself. And underneath all of it, at the bottom, the original deposit. The thing a dragon the size of a hillside had put inside an infant and then walked away from on the 7th day of July without saying goodbye. The plane went silent. The wind reversed. The scarf blazed white. Kaguya Otsutsuki, pinned in place at the foot of her own tree, looked up at a boy standing in a crater and said the last thing she ever said. Wait! Fire Dragon King's roar. The impact is described in 11 separate national records and nobody agrees on the numbers. What came out of him went forward this time. All of it in one lance, gold white. Were 300 meters wide at the base and widening, and it went into Kaguya Otsutsuki and it kept going. The God Tree came apart from the roots up. The dimensional gates hanging open around the field burned shut, one after another, 11 of them, gone like paper. The edges of the world shook. That is what Sasuke wrote in his own account, that the edges of the world shook, and he was the only person present with eyes capable of seeing it. And he never took the word back. She held. She held for 11 seconds, because she was what she was, and no single strike takes down the mother of chakra. Her palms came up and the eyes in them opened, and she tried to drink it, and it went into her hands and out the back of them. Her third eye locked open. The chakra came out of her in a wall to meet it. The original chakra, all of it. The thing every jutsu in every village on the map was a descendant of, thrown forward in one sheet against the fire. The 2 oldest things in creation ran against each other at the foot of a burning tree, with the whole world asleep in the branches. And Naruto Uzumaki held too, because he was what he was, and he had never once in his life stopped. The fire found the roots. That was the end of it. The God Tree's roots ran through her, up through her legs and her spine, and out into the world. 10,000 years of them. And the fire went down into that system and lit all of it at once from the inside everywhere, and Kaguya Otsutsuki learned what her own harvest had been standing on top of the entire time. She came apart. She fell in white flakes across 9 kilometers of glass, and the branches let go, and 30,000 cocoons opened, and 30,000 people came down out of the air into the ash, with the sound of that roar still hanging over the plain. Something black came scrabbling out of the melt at the base of the stump, screeching, half a mouth left, dragging itself toward the fading light. Naruto Uzumaki put one foot on it. "You rode a rock and lied to a whole clan for 1,000 years, he said. Black Zetsu got out most of the word mother. He burned it to nothing, and it tasted, he said afterward, exactly like a lie. Then the silence came. Naruto went down onto his hands and knees on the glass. The scales faded off his arms slowly, like embers cooling in a grate, gold going to red, going to skin. His hair fell back down over his eyes. The gold went out of them, and the blue came back, and there was blood coming out of him in 11 places, and his right leg had a hole through it that would never fully close. The scarf was still there, still around his throat, still white, still whole. One scorch mark on the end, 3 fingers wide. The first it had ever taken in 16 years. Sasuke Uchiha came down onto one knee beside him, Rinnegan fading out to black, breathing like a man who had run a long way, with one arm hanging useless and blood down both sides of his face. "You're an idiot," Sasuke said. Naruto laughed. It hurt. It hurt in a way that suggested at least 2 of his ribs had entered the conversation. He did it anyway, flat on the glass, looking up at a sky that had a normal moon in it. Sakura Haruno sat down between the 2 of them, put one hand on each, and started crying so hard she had to work in short bursts. And she still got both of their hearts back into a rhythm she liked before she let herself finish. The news went across that battlefield faster than anybody could carry it. It went out from the crater in every direction at the speed of people telling each other things. Kaguya gone, the tree down, the Tsukuyomi broken, the war over. 30,000 shinobi standing in ash from 5 villages that had spent 400 years trying to kill each other, and the noise they made when it reached them went up off that plain like weather. Rock Lee got to the crater with one arm in a splint and his legs strapped and both eyes running, and he took one look and dropped to his knees. And what came out of him about the eternal flames of youth was loud enough that Tenten had to grab the back of his collar with both hands and physically hold him upright while he did it. Kiba Inuzuka sat down on a rock and told Akamaru the story 4 times in a row while Akamaru licked his ruined ear. Kakashi Hatake walked the last 100 meters to his students and stood over the 3 of them with one good eye and nothing whatsoever to say. And then he sat down in the ash with them, and that was the correct thing, and everybody there knew it. Gaara of the desert stood at the edge of the field with the wind coming off the wastes and looked at the sky for a long time. His sand rose up around him and hung there, and then settled, and the face that almost never moved let something in that had waited 20 years for an opening. Tamari, standing behind her brother, wiped her eyes and did not tell anybody. And in Konoha, 11 hours later, a hawk came in over the wall, and Tsunade Senju took the tube off its leg, with hands she had trouble keeping still. She read 9 words. She sat down in the Hokage's chair, and she put both hands flat on the desk, and she closed her eyes for 10 seconds. Then she stood back up and shouted for Shizune, and started organizing the relief, because that is what the hat means. The village lit every lamp it owned the night the army came home. Naruto Uzumaki came back on a stretcher for 11 kilometers. Escaped it, was recaptured by Sakura, escaped it again, and walked the last 6 kilometers on a leg that had a hole through it, because he had come home carrying somebody the last time, and he refused to arrive any other way. They had a ceremony. He fell asleep during it, sitting up, which the Land of Fire's daimyo took surprisingly well. Afterward, when the speeches were finished, and the food was finished, and Lee had been carried home, Naruto Uzumaki climbed up onto the roof of Yamanaka Flowers with a hitch in his gait, and Ino was already up there with 2 cups and a blanket, and the pepper-smelling purple flower in its pot beside her. Because she had known exactly where he would go, and she had gotten there first on purpose. He sat down. It took him a while. The village was underneath them, lit end to end, and there were people in the streets at midnight for the first time in a year, and somebody down by the river was playing something badly on a flute. Ino handed him a cup. He drank it in one go, which was wrong, and she let him. "Your leg," she said. "It's fine. It has a hole in it." "Yeah, but it's a hole with a story." He put the cup down. His hands were shaking a little still, and had been for 2 days, and Sakura had said it would stop by next week. "Your dad's out of bed." "He walked to the mailbox today. It took him 9 minutes." Ino pulled the blanket over both their knees. "He asked about you before he asked about the mail." "I like your dad. He's terrifying." "That's why." They sat. Down below, a dog got loose and 3 people chased it, and the flute stopped and started again in a different key. "You know what's weird?" Naruto said. "You have to narrow it down. When you scream my name into the net," he was looking at the village and not at her. "Right at the end there, when she put everybody in the tree, he tapped his own temple. You did that on purpose so somebody would know where to look." Ino's cup stopped halfway up. "You heard that?" "No." He shook his head. "I smelled it. 40 kilometers. You were the only thing on the whole field that was scared for somebody else instead of for yourself, and it came off you like smoke off a stack." He shrugged one shoulder, the one that worked. "It was the last thing I got before the sky went red. It's what I aimed at." Ino Yamanaka sat on the roof of her family's flower shop and looked at the most frightening thing in the 5 nations, who had trouble with vegetables and buckets and boats, and who had just told her, in his own words, that she had been a compass. "You're such an idiot," she said, and her voice had gone thick. He turned finally and looked at her straight, and his eyes were blue and steady and had absolutely no ceremony in them whatsoever. "I've got a hole in my leg and my hands won't stop shaking, and I ate a goddess 2 days ago. And out of every single thing that's happened to me since I was 7 years old, you are the only one I've never once gotten tired of. Not one day. Not even a little." He frowned, working it out as he went, the way he had always done everything. "That's the whole thing. That's all I've got. My leg hurts and you're my favorite. I want to do the rest of it next to you, whatever the rest of it is. Even the boring parts, and there better be some boring parts because I'm honestly kind of done." Ino Yamanaka put her cup down on the roof tile. "That," she said, "is the worst romantic speech ever given by a human being. I know. You compared me to a hole in your leg. I compared you favorably to a hole in my leg. Naruto." "Yeah?" She took his face in both hands, which ran hot enough that anybody else would have flinched, and she had never once flinched in 9 years, which was the only reason any of this had ever worked. "Good," she said, and she kissed him on the roof of a flower shop above a village with every lamp in it lit, and the rain that started up 10 minutes later turned to steam a hand's width off his skin and rose around both of them in a column that reached above the rooftops, and the old woman across the street with the folding chair saw the whole thing and told everybody she knew by breakfast. He was on the Hokage monument at dawn. He got up there on a bad leg without waking her, which took 40 minutes and was worth it. He stood on the 4th stone head with the wind coming up the face of the mountain and looked down at the whole thing, smoke going up from chimneys and threads. The river taking the first of the light and turning gold from the bend all the way to the mill. The gate guards changing shift, 2 figures the size of grains, one of them stretching. A market cart coming up the north road with the driver asleep and the horse doing the work. Somewhere down in the eastern district, a kid yelling about something with total commitment at 6 in the morning for no reason anybody would ever be able to determine her. Standing, awake, all of it. Naruto Uzumaki reached up and untied the white scarf from around his throat, which he had done maybe 11 times in 16 years. He held it out in front of him with both hands. The woven scales caught the morning light and threw it back in 100 small pieces, gold on white, the way they had on the day somebody left an infant at a village gate in the summer with nothing else at all. The weave was perfect. 16 years of explosive tags and fireballs and water dragons and C4 and lava and a goddess, and the whole length of it was unmarked except for the one thing: 3 fingers of scorch on the end, the first mark it had ever taken. He looked at it for a while. "Hey," he said. "Old man." The wind came up over the mountain and moved the ends of it. I got strong. He turned his head east into the sun coming up over the tree line and squinted into it the way you look at something you have been looking at your whole life without knowing why. Then he wrapped the scarf back around his throat and pulled the knot tight with his teeth. Same as always. "Come find me when you're ready," Naruto Uzumaki said. "I'll punch you in the mouth, and then I'll hug you." Far away, past the borders, past the desert, past the sea, in a place with no name on any map, under a mountain that had held its shape for a very long time, something enormous opened one eye the color of a forge. It had felt dragon force in the world once before, 13 years back, coming off a valley in the rain, and it had lifted its head then and gone still again, because the fire had been young and the time had been wrong. This was different. This had come across an ocean. This had come with a name on it. The mountain moved. Stone came off its back in sheets the size of houses, and the sound of it rolled out across 400 kilometers of empty country, and something the length of a river got its feet under it and stood up for the first time in 13 years and turned its head toward the land of fire and breathed in a very long way west, on top of a stone head above a village waking up. A boy in a white scarf lifted his own head at exactly the same moment, because on a good wind, Naruto Uzumaki could smell a thing across 3 countries, and what came in on that one was iron and old smoke and a warm chest to fall asleep against. And he started to laugh out loud alone into the sunrise, because Igneel was coming, and he had been right about the ending all along.
That was the full story of the boy who turned fire into power and never stopped rising. From the crater to the final roar, every battle, every bond, every impossible win is here. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching. Subscribe for more complete stories like this.